So at the time I got into the arms business, I was in college. I was studying chemistry. I've always been a bit of a science nerd. We started working together because I realized this guy knows how to make money. And like, I had saved up a decent amount of money, but he, like, when I asked him like how much money he had made, like in 1 year working on his own, he had made $1.8 million. Wow. And he was 18 years old. So I was like, wow, this guy knows something I don't know. Yep. And he's making a lot more money than me, and maybe I could learn something. And so that's how I got into business with him. As part of selling weapons and ammo and various military equipment to the United States government, he and eventually I got a whole network of suppliers, and from all over the world. I mean, mostly Eastern Europe. Efraim calls me up and he's like, I've got good news and bad news. And I said, what's the bad news? And he says, well, our first task order is only 600K. And I said, we won the contract? He's like, fuck yeah, motherfucker. I'm picking you up. We're going to celebrate.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride through the shadows of the international arms trade with a man who lived it all. From his unlikely beginnings as a massage therapist to becoming a key player in one of the most lucrative and dangerous industries, this is a gripping saga of risk, deception, and redemption. Join us as we peel back the layers of his life, uncovering the shocking truths and adrenaline-fueled escapades that inspired the hit movie War Dogs. Strap in and prepare to be captivated by the untold tale of a modern-day outlaw. David, welcome to the podcast.
Good intro, man.
That was clean,
that
huh?
Fired me
up. That was clean.
A modern day outlaw. I haven't heard that one before.
You like that one, eh?
I kind of like it.
Appreciate you coming today.
Yeah.
Of course.
Massage therapy
Yeah.
to arms dealing.
Yeah.
You've done it all and everything in between,
Definitely quite a range.
right?
Yeah.
Where should we start? Where do things start? You know, where does life start taking a turn? Because we watched the movie, obviously. You start off many different jobs.
Yeah.
Selling bed sheets,
Yeah.
right? And so on. What was life like at that point? And then take us through the journey.
Right. So at the time I got into the arms business, I was in college. I was studying chemistry. I've always been a bit of a science nerd. And I had a few different gigs that I was making money on the side. I was doing massage therapy, as they show in the movie. But I also had, most of my money was actually coming from a few side businesses I had. I was selling SD cards on eBay. I was buying them in bulk from China, and I was brokering deals for bed sheets from manufacturers in Pakistan to nursing homes and hospitals in the United States and distributors in the United States. And unlike in the movie, I never took delivery of those bed sheets.
Okay.
It didn't fill my house up with bucks. I was just brokering deals. I didn't even see the bed sheets personally. I would just take a transferable letter of credit from the buyer, transfer it to the seller, and just get a commission in the middle and just deliver directly to the buyer. So it wasn't something that, and it was going pretty well. I in the movie, they exaggerate my humble beginnings because it makes it for a better story arc. And at the time I was pretty comfortable. I wasn't like rich, but I'd saved up quite a bit of money, and I mainly got into all these businesses because I didn't want to get like a minimum wage job like all my friends had. My friends were flipping burgers and being waiters and stuff, and I realized when I first got into massage therapy that I could make more money doing one massage than my friends would work, an entire day flipping burgers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I realized, that's a much better use of my time, and massage school was only 6 months, so I could get that done really quick. And pretty big bonus, the girls kind of like when a guy can give good massages.
That's true, which the movie actually doesn't show. They show an old man instead.
Yeah. In reality, I did have quite a few gay clients. This is Miami, and so a good amount of my clients were gay, but they were all very respectful. And that whole towel thing did happen once.
Did it?
That's a real true. That's a true story. That did happen. But even when stuff like that happens, I mean, in my experience, gay guys are very, very respectful. Like if you say no, they no is no.
But they'll try something. They'll try it out.
They may try something, but they'll be. they'll be very apologetic if you don't go for it.
Yes. And in terms of school,
So,
I guess you didn't go to
yeah.
college or anything like that.
No, so I was in school. I was in
Okay.
university. So I was doing these things as a part-time
Okay.
thing while I was in university studying chemistry.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, my goal was in long term at the time was to be a chemical engineer, and also was doing music on the side, and I was hoping to make enough money to support a music career, but of course, my parents always told me you should have a backup plan just in case music turns out not to make you millions of dollars like every boy dreams, right?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you too,
So-
like the family life at that point too.
Yeah.
Like what were your ambitions and how did that match maybe with what your parents wanted?
Right. So my family is very religious. My dad was a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, and so I grew up in a very religious household. I'm one of 9 children.
Wow.
I'm third from the oldest. Yeah, and of course, their ambitions for my life was that I would study Bible all day and become a rabbi. They said I had a great mind to be a rabbi. I'm really wasting my life studying chemistry. So that's kind of how they saw it.
Of course.
Because to them, that's the highest calling in life is to be a man of God.
Of course.
When they realized that wasn't going to work out, then very traditional family. They want you to have a traditional job and so they encouraged me to do something to get some sort of career where it would be a pretty solid employment aspects and science. If you get a scientific degree, generally you have pretty decent employment opportunities, more so than an arts degree generally. So and I've always been a musician and a singer, and so I've always loved that aspect, but I definitely agreed with them that it's good to have backup plans. And so I've always had a decent mind for science and for math. And so I was studying that at the time.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I guess throughout your life, then you start moving on up, but you're not making enough money. You might have a family. You had a partner at
Right.
the time.
So yeah, I got a partner a little bit after I actually met Efraim.
Okay.
So yeah, they mess
Okay.
with the storyline a bit in the
Okay.
movie
Because
it
I'm
just
wondering-
makes a better movie that way.
Yeah,
but
and I'm wondering what clicked for you, because in the movie it
Yeah.
shows more so like, okay, wow, you're having a kid, now you
Right.
need to make a change.
Right.
So what was the real change maybe?
So the timeline, that is true,
Okay.
but the timing was a bit different in real life. So
Mm.
I met Efraim maybe a few months before I met my partner at the time. And we started working together because I realized this guy knows how to make money. And like I had saved up a decent amount of money, but he like when I asked him like how much money he had made, like in 1 year working on his own, he had made $1.8 million.
Wow.
And he was 18 years old. And so I was like, wow, this guy knows something I don't know.
Yep.
And he's making a lot more money than me, and maybe I could learn something. And so that's how I got into business with him. But it really got intense once I realized I was going to have a kid, about maybe like 4 or 5 months after starting with Efraim. Then I realized, this is serious, and I really got to work my ass off, and because it's not just me anymore. Right. And after that is when we won the very big contract.
The first bid. Yeah.
No, it wasn't the first bid, but
Okay.
the first bid that I won, I made like $8,000.
But for you at the time.
At the time, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was only a few weeks worth of work, so
Okay.
pretty good. Yeah, after about 9 months of working together is when we saw the contract for the Afghan deal, which
Okay.
turned into the $300 million contract.
And for anyone listening, like at the beginning,
Yeah.
what you were doing was perfectly legal.
Yeah.
Correct.
It was all legal
Yeah.
until it wasn't.
Of course, right? So I guess you didn't really feel like any sort of way or any second thoughts about getting into that business.
Not at first. When I started working with Efraim and I realized the kind of guy he was, I started having lots of second thoughts because he turned out to be, he was always kind of like a bit of a crazy kid growing up. I mean, we met each other in synagogue of all places. Neither of us liked to pray, so we'd sneak out and go hang out on the basketball courts. But then he got sent off to his uncle to work when he was like 16 because he got kicked out of the religious Jewish school he was in for smoking weed. And so to punish him, his parents sent him off to LA to work for his uncle because they said, if you're not going to take school seriously, you're going to join the workforce. You're going to see what real life's about. And so he worked for his uncle. His uncle owned a big pawn shop and warehouse in South Central LA. And one of the things they sold was guns, as most pawn shops do. And he got obsessed with guns. So as a lot of teenage boys do. And so he started, really concentrating on that aspect of the business. And then his uncle taught him how to bid on contracts for the government. When the government wants to buy something, they are required to, by law, put it out for open bid. Right,
which I found super interesting. That was cool. Yeah.
So and that way, in theory, the government gets the best price for the taxpayer. So the least amount of tax dollars are spent towards whatever they want to buy. And they have a relatively complex system set up to do this. They have a lot of rules that you need to follow, a lot of like hoops you need to jump through, and paperwork you got to fill out, and rules you got to read and follow, and all that stuff. And so Efraim learned how to do that entire process from his uncle. And then he had a falling out with his uncle when he was about 18 and 17, and then they both claim the other screwed each other over. They're both scumbags, so I believe them both. And his uncle has a terrible reputation in the industry as a scumbag, and as well as Efraim does. But anyway, his Efraim decided to move back to Miami after he had the falling out with his uncle. Started his own company, AEY Inc., and started bidding on federal contracts. This was like 2004, 2005, right after the invasion of Iraq. So the U.S. government was trying to build a democratic country in Iraq, and one of the things they need is a functional military and police force and all the equipment that goes with it. So he started bidding to supply that, and started winning a lot of contracts and started doing really well. And that's about a year after he was working on his own is when we bumped into each other at a mutual friend's house and had that conversation where he asked me to come work with him. Because he said, like, a lot of the stuff I was doing is very similar to what he was doing, because he had to search for suppliers overseas and arrange shipping and logistics and licensing and import and export permits and all that stuff. And I was doing that with the SD cards and with the bed sheets and towels. That I was importing into the United States. And so he realized that I could transfer those skills to what he was doing, and there were much bigger opportunities in the government sector.
Of course.
So that's how we got started. But to go back to your question, after about like maybe a month or two of working with him, because our original deal was that I would work on new types of contracts. So he was specializing in weapons and ammunition, and I decided to specialize in fuel, right? Because it was a very big industry, and he had zero experience doing it, and that way I could expand the business into other industries. And that my first contract I won was for I think it was 40,000 gallons of propane.
Wow.
So delivered to an Air Force base in Wyoming. And made 8,000. My end of the deal was 8,000. We split the profits 50-50 because I did 95% of the work, and he did. And he taught me how the government system worked, and he was very good at negotiating. So he would once I would set the whole deal up, he would go and talk to all the the suppliers, the logistics people, and negotiate nickel and dime them down and to increase our profit margins. So so he was very good at that, and he would look over my bid to the government, make sure I was doing everything correctly, and everything was under his company's name. So that was our deal. So while I was working on the fuel contracts, he got a request from one of his contacts to supply the King of Nepal, right? The King of Nepal at the time was trying to put down a pro-democracy movement, right? They had lots of protesters protesting for democracy, and the King of Nepal was shopping for riot gear and heavy machine guns and bulletproof vests and batons and like attack helicopters. And Efraim got really excited, and he's like, yeah, I could do this. And he bragged to me, he's like, I'm gonna put together a Save the King package. And I told him, I'm like, Efraim, first of all, are you sure that's legal, right?
Yeah.
Because U.S. government tends to look badly on monarchs suppressing pro-democracy movements, especially with heavy machine guns and attack helicopters. And even if it is legal, it's kind of messed up, right? Yeah. And he says to me, he's like, listen, bro, you just work on your fuel contract. You leave this to me, okay? You don't worry about it. And I was like, holy shit, this guy like doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't really care, both morally or legally. And I thought to myself, man, if I keep on doing business with him, I could probably get in a lot of trouble if this is the way he handles things and the way he cares about things. And so but of course, I saw him making millions of dollars, and I told myself, well, I'm not going to take part in those shady, nasty things. He'll do that. I'll do the completely above board, 100% legal things. And all I need to do is make a few $1 million and I'm out. Right. And
so you did have an exit plan.
I had an exit plan. I was planning on making $5 million and then I was going to quit.
Okay.
And I figured with $5 million, I could spend maybe $1 million on kickstarting a music career and become a rock star. That was my goal. And then $4 million to hold me over just in case that music career didn't take off.
So you did have a feeling that he was maybe bad business.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a very strong feeling that he was doing risky business.
Okay.
Both legally and definitely morally.
But this I want to ask quickly because I think there's the Save the King package, and you mentioned Nepal is shopping.
Yeah.
So this is not a U.S. government contract by any means.
Correct.
And how does he or you guys or the business even get a hold of a request like that?
So you're a creator and you've decided to step into the wonderful world of OnlyFans. Listen, good luck to you. However, we know it's not always rainbows and sunshine, all right? When you step into that kind of industry, that kind of world, you want to get involved there, you got to make sure your back is covered legally. There are a lot of slimy people in the industry. Got to make sure you're checked out and all the boxes are checked correctly.
Enter OnlyFirm. These guys are the real deal when it comes to legal support for OnlyFans models. Picture this, an experienced team of individuals who know the industry like the back of their hand. We got the 3 C's, all right? Content protection, they got you covered. Contracts, they got you covered. Copyright registration, they got you covered.
And here's the kicker, okay? They're not just some cookie cutter law firm. They pretend they know what they're doing, this and that. No, they understand all the unique challenges as an OnlyFans creator. So leave the legal headaches behind, okay? With OnlyFirm on your team, get back to doing what you do best, creating content for your fans, make sure they keep coming back, and they'll take care of everything on the legal side.
So do yourself a favor, check out their Instagram page at The OnlyFans Lawyer and shoot them a DM with any questions. You'll thank me later.
And for any more information on their services, check out www.onlyfirm.com. All right, let's get back to this episode.
As part of selling weapons and ammo and various military equipment to the United States government, he and eventually I got a whole network of suppliers.
Okay.
And from all over the world. I mean, mostly Eastern Europe, but all over the world. And because we were talking to so many people and had this large network, occasionally one of the people who supplied us say, hey, I know a guy who's looking for this, that. I know you have a network. Do you have anyone who could supply this? And so that's how that deal
initially came.
Yeah.
And when that comes in, a request like that, does that come with a sort of a budget?
Sometimes they'll say, well, I've got this other offer at this price. If you could beat it, we can talk.
Okay.
And sometimes they're just like, give us your best offer. So let's see what you got.
Makes sense.
Because usually they won't tell you a price to beat because just in case you offer way lower. And that's kind of like what the US federal government does is they won't publish what the bids are. Okay. They only publish the winning bid.
Fair.
And so even the winner who wins the bid is not supposed to know how much lower he was than the next person, because if they know, then on the next contract they may significantly raise the price because they know they've got that margin to make, and that's not in the government's interest. The government wants to spend as little money as possible.
So that deal is the first kind of or one of the bigger initial deals where you go, okay, this is sort of shady?
Yeah, that was the first time I realized that this guy is doing shady business. But the first time I realized he might be like a sociopath, like for real. And not that I'm a psychological medical expert or anything. I'm not trying to diagnose him or anything like that.
Sure.
But from every definition of sociopath, he fits it perfectly that I've seen. So when I realized he might be, there was something different about him, was when we were driving. We went to a gun show in Orlando, and we were driving. He was driving. I was in the passenger seat. Back from Orlando. It was late at night, and we were on one of these really straight roads that's common in Florida, where it's a two-way street, but it's like one lane each way. So there's no like there's only like a dotted line separating you,
no
or
passing
a solid
lane.
line. Yeah, exactly. separating you from the oncoming traffic, and there were no lights either, no street lights. So he had his brights on. And I told him, there's cars coming the other way. And I told him, Efraim, you're supposed to turn your brights down when there's an oncoming car. And he's like, why? And I said, well, because you could blind the other driver. And he said, well, but I mean, who gives a shit? Because I need to see the road.
Oh my god.
And I said, well, but I mean, you can make the other driver crash. And he's like, yeah, but I need to see the road.
Wow.
And so I said, yeah, but they can crash into us. And he said, oh, that's a good point.
Oh my God.
And then he turns it down.
Yeah.
Like it did not even occur to him to even care
That far in.
that he might cause someone else to crash.
Yeah.
It was only when it affected him that it even kind of lit the light bulb. And when he did that, I was like, whoa, there's
Sociopath,
there's something very different about his brain. And it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So
you said you started off, you were focusing on like fuel and new business for him, right?
yes.
Was there a moment when you started working with him more on the weapon side of things?
Yes.
Okay.
So after I'd won the fuel contract, I worked on a few other things, some big contracts that eventually I didn't win. I was working on a food contract, on a clothing contract, on a contract for vehicles. They were all multi-million-dollar contracts I ended up losing, and that's common in government contracting, because it's kind of like a lottery. Not really lottery, because it's whoever's most competitive, but you don't know who else is bidding on the contract and what they're bidding. True. So you could bid on 10 contracts, and if you're lucky, you'll win one. But that one contract could be millions of dollars.
Could change your life, yeah.
So it could change your life. So it's kind of like a high. There's a high rate of losing and disappointment in government contracting, but occasionally you hit something big.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the business. Okay. So I worked on a whole bunch of different contracts, lost a bunch. And then while he was doing his own gun thing, he had bid on a contract that he ended up winning. And it was for, I don't remember the exact number. It was between 150 and 200 different items. And they were all like rare gun parts. So it was going to the special forces, because the special forces, they train on pretty much every weapon system that they could get their hands on. So in case the special forces are in the field and they come across old weapons, and they lose the weapons they came in, or they run out of ammo or whatever, they're well versed in the weapons that are out there. So we were so he won this contract for like 150, 200 different rare items, rare gun parts. And he realized it was going to be a massive pain in the butt to source it all. He knew the general ballpark figures of the prices, because he knew the gun industry real well. So he bid it at a decent margin, so there was plenty of room. But he didn't want to go through the process of pretty much calling up every rare gun parts dealer in America and trying to source all these items. And so he told me, you know what? I don't want to work on this. Why don't you work on delivering on this contract? And that's kind of how I got into the whole gun aspect of it. Okay. And I made a decent amount of money on that. And it took me a while to deliver. It was a lot of work. But that's how I got into it. And then when I was done with that contract, about a little bit later is when we saw the Afghan bid, and that's when I started really getting into it.
So explain the Afghan bid for anybody again, if they haven't watched the movie.
Right.
Walk us through what that looks like and that whole thing.
Yeah. So the reason they put it out there is because the United States invaded Afghanistan, I think it was 2001 after September 11th, and took out the Taliban, and then tried to set up a democratic government in Afghanistan. And of course, the Taliban retreated to the mountains and kept on attacking them guerrilla style. So the United States was trying to supply the Afghan National Army and police. This was in 2006. George Bush was still president, and he was very, very unpopular at the time. And they realized, the Bush administration realized that the next president might be a Democrat because he was so unpopular, which they were right. Obama was the next president. But they also thought that the Democrats would definitely pull out of Afghanistan immediately, which they were wrong about. I mean, it took until Biden in 2020 or 21, I forgot, to pull out of Afghanistan. So because they were expecting the United States to pull out, they decided to try to arm the Afghans for like the next 30 years, just so that they wouldn't run out of ammo and collapse that way. Turned out that even with all the ammo, they collapsed pretty quick in like 3 days after the U.S. left. But they didn't know that at the time. So they decided to source a massive amount of munitions. And at first they went to the Russians because they were the only single source that could supply everything. It was like 30 different items, everything from like pistol ammo to mortar shells and tank rounds and anti-aircraft rockets. It was all munitions, not the weapons themselves, but the stuff that the weapons shoot.
Okay.
But then the Russians supplied the Iranians with some nuclear technology and got put on the banned list. So the U.S. Army, who was doing the supply of the Afghan army, was legally not allowed to buy from the Russians anymore. And so they decided they didn't want to go, because they didn't want to go and deal with 50 different suppliers for all these things. So they put it out for bid for a single winner for the entire thing. And that gave us the opportunity as middlemen to go and find all our suppliers and put together a bid for them. And we were bidding against major companies. Like we were bidding against ATK Systems, against General Dynamics. These are multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies. And it was just us two, right? We were working out of his apartment in his living room. He had a desk covered in papers, and we were sharing the same desk. He was on one side, I was on the other, with our laptops. And but we realized that because the way government contracting works is if the contract amount is above a certain amount, these days it's $250,000. If it's above that, you need to have past performance, which means that you need to show proof that you've done business similar to this in the past, that you've delivered these kinds of items in the past. And it doesn't have to be to the government necessarily. It could be a commercial deal, but you need to prove that you've done this. So we had already... AEY as a company had already delivered to Iraq a lot of these same items that they were asking for the Afghans. So we had the past performance, of course, in much smaller quantities, but that didn't matter, the quantities. As far as past performance goes, it shows you can prove that you've delivered these items. So we technically qualified for this enormous contract. We didn't really think we were going to win it because it was just so enormous. It was like at least 20 times bigger than the biggest contract we'd ever won so far, up till that point. And but we figured we technically qualified, so we might as well submit a bid. And so I started working. So he had like 5 main suppliers he was working with in the industry, and he got best prices from them. And it was my job to pretty much get prices from everybody else and their mother. Right?
Okay.
Just to compare,
to compare, and also possibly if we got a better
cheaper.
price, get better deals. And it was a good thing I did that, because some of our best prices came from sources that he was completely unaware of.
Wow.
And so I worked like a good 2 months on that, and it was a very, very hard work because most of the suppliers are in Eastern Europe and they don't speak English, and at the time they were still communicating with fax, and they didn't even have emails, and so it was a big pain in the butt. And half the time the fax would like cut off in mid fax, and you don't even know if they got it, and then you call them up to make sure they got it, and then the one guy in the entire company that speaks even a little bit of English is out to lunch at that time, so you have to call and then so it's, and the Eastern Europeans, especially at that time, they're still kind of like a holdover from Soviet from Soviet time. So they're not very customer friendly, to put it mildly. Like you're bothering them if you're calling them up to try to give them business. They're like, they're annoyed. So it's very difficult to do business with them. But eventually, after many late nights, we put together a pretty extensive spreadsheet with all the suppliers and supply that we had, and we had a pretty competitive bid, and we submitted it to the government. And then we didn't hear anything from them for like 4 or 5 months, and then they contacted us, and so we figured we lost because we didn't hear back from them. Then they, like 4 or 5 months later, they said, "Hey, we need to do like 4 different audits regarding this contract." And that an audit from the government's perspective is they want to see, there are different types. Like they want to see a supplier audit. They ask you, who are you using as a supplier? List them. What's your transportation plan? The transportation audit, financial audit. Do you have enough money to support this contract? Because you need to pay the suppliers in advance, but the government pays you 30 days after you deliver.
net 30.
So you need to float that, right? So you need to have a certain amount of money in order to do these deals, especially these big deals. And there was also an accounting audit. They wanted to make sure that we had the proper accounting system to track such a big contract. And so we realized, they want to audit us. That means that we're in the running, if not in the lead, because they don't go through that entire hassle unless they're very serious.
For 10 different companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll do it for maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
The top contenders. And so Efraim had, the way he'd run his business, he had 0 accounting, right? He hadn't done any accounting. And so we had to hire a forensic accountant to go and like backdate his entire accounting system and like make up documents to show a paper trail on all the previous deals he'd done and like go back years. Wow. And it was like a couple week process. And Efraim loved that one of his main accountant had served time in federal prison for fraud. Yeah, he just thought that was cool.
He was loving it.
He loved that. He loved that. To him, that was a green flag, not a red flag. Yeah.
He's like us. Kind of thing, right?
Pretty much.
There you go.
Yeah. And so he used his accountants, and he hired a specialist accountant to create the entire accounting system. And eventually, the government sent down these contracting officers to do an on-site inspection of our office. At that point, we had actually. It was only after we were in the running for a $300 million contract. Yeah. That's when he decided to spend like $2,000 a month on an office. Yeah.
Budgeting.
Yeah, exactly. Because he didn't want to spend anything. So they sent a few contracting officers down to the office to do an on-site inspection. Efraim's very charming in person. Like he's very funny. He can flatter people. Like most of the contracting officers were these like middle-aged older ladies. Yeah. And so he like when he met them, he's like, over the phone I couldn't tell how beautiful you were.
Oh my God.
He's like, ladies, if it wasn't completely illegal, I'd be buying you diamonds right now.
Well, I think you even mentioned in the movie where you go, he knew how to be the person that the other person wanted him to be.
He was very good at that.
Yeah.
He was very, very good at that. And this is from what I've read, a hallmark of like sociopaths and psychopaths. They're very good at acting the way in a way that they can to manipulate people. Yes. They're very good at manipulating people because they don't feel bad about it, right? Yeah. Normal people, right? Yeah. When you're lying to someone's face, you kind of feel bad about it, which makes you a bad liar because, you don't do it with conviction, right? Mm-hmm. To be a good liar, you have to speak as if you're telling the truth.
Yes.
And you need 100% conviction for that. And most of us don't have that. But because he had 0 qualms about anything, he could lie with a straight face and be 100% convincing. And so, that scene in the movie where he pretends like he has a wife and a kid, and if the contracting officer is going to cancel his contract,
bad. He's
I've actually seen him do that, and I've seen the tears roll down his face, like while he's talking on the phone. You don't understand, sir. If you cancel this contract, my wife is going to leave me. My business is going to go under. My kid. He's in the hospital and medical bills, and like he's crying and his voice is shaking, and I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Like he's actually.
So it was that extreme.
It was that extreme.
Yeah.
Like he, like I couldn't believe it. Like I'm like, I know everything he's saying. He's not married. He doesn't have a kid. You know, like you know.
When he gets off the phone, he's like, "Fuck this guy."
It's great. Like that.
Yeah.
Like he changes like on a snap. Like
Okay, so they didn't exaggerate his role, really.
Yeah. So they, if anything, to be honest, they toned down his character a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. People ask me, "Oh, was Efraim that crazy in real life?" He's way crazier in real life.
Oh my God.
He was much more of an asshole in real life. Like in the movie, he's kind of a lovable asshole.
He's funny
He's
sometimes
funny.
and shit,
I mean,
yeah.
Efraim in real life is actually even funnier than Jonah Hill was in the movie. Efraim was really funny, but he was also a real big dick. You know, like he would love to. So in the movie, they have a scene where he's hitting on some girl, and Dan Blazarian punches him out, right? So in real life, he would do way worse than that, you know? I mean, because in the movie, he was just hitting on some girl, whatever, you know, like Dan Blazarian had no reason to punch him out, you know, other than being an asshole, right? But in real life, he would go up to like a couple that would be like in a bar that's like holding hands, and he'd come up to the girl on the girl's side and take her hand and say, "Come on, baby. You should hang out with me. This loser's, not good enough for you."
Oh my
Come
God.
on.
Yeah.
Come on.
What a savage.
Yeah.
I feel like you gotta be,
Yeah.
and again, maybe not the best shape, but you gotta be like that if you want to be,
Well,
like, if you want to do business at that level.
yeah.
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
People think you have to be an asshole to be successful, and that may work in the short term.
Okay.
Right. But the long term, he fucked himself out of every relationship.
He burnt every bridge.
He burnt the bridge.
He burnt every bridge.
Yeah.
And that was just his way of doing business. And yeah, he made a bunch of money, in the short term, but he always got burned in the end, right? The reason he went to prison is because he burned every bridge, right? The reason he lost a lot of deals because he burnt every bridge. And because he would burn bridges for like little things. Like I've seen him like destroy some guy's business just to make an extra 3% on a contract.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And like he didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
That extra 3% wasn't going to move the needle for him. He already had many millions at the bank. That extra 3% wasn't going to make a difference at all, but it made a huge difference to the guy he was fucking over.
Yeah.
And that guy went bankrupt because of it. And that guy, he's never able to do business with him again, right?
Yeah,
and
true.
all the people he screwed over, he can't do business with again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think like the United States has this kind of idea of hustle culture where you got to be savage, you got to be brutal, you got to, like be merciless, and all that stuff. And yes, that works, but that's not a way to build a long-term
I think it's
career.
time and place kind of thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're not gonna. His whole demeanor
Yeah.
was that.
Yes.
Right. Where like,
exactly.
okay, maybe a good leader, they know when to be
Yes.
aggressive and when not to
Exactly.
be, or when to burn a bridge and when not to. Right? So
Exactly.
you were kind of seeing this in real time.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
yeah. He didn't know when not to do it because
No.
he had only one way of being.
And then you
One
ever try to
gear.
talk to him
Yeah.
and be like
yeah, he wouldn't.
he wouldn't try- he
He
wouldn't-
doesn't listen to anyone.
didn't care at all,
He didn't
eh?
listen to anyone.
Okay, so-
I'll just give you
Yeah.
one little story
Of
of
course.
a great example of how he thinks. So there's a guy named Matt Cox. Who was in prison with Diveroli Diveroli went to, spoiler alert, he went to prison for 4 years, right?
Okay.
While he was in prison, he met a guy named Matt Cox who was in prison himself for like 15 years for like mortgage fraud. Matt Cox decided he wanted to be like a true crime writer. So he was,
I've watched his stuff.
yeah.
I've
So,
watched his
so
stuff,
yeah. So Matt has his own podcast now
Yeah.
called Inside True Crime. I was a
Yeah.
guest on his
Okay.
podcast. It's a great podcast. And Matt told me that, so Matt wrote Efraim's memoir,
Okay.
which is 90% bullshit. According to Matt.
Yes.
I'm not
according
I mean,
to you.
according to me as well, because I lived
seen
it.
it.
And
Uh-huh.
I've seen it, but according to Matt, the guy who wrote it as well. In fact, it was so Matt actually took a work of fiction he had been working on in the past and combined it with Diveroli's story because they were just trying to get it out fast enough in order to sue Warner Brothers over the movie. So yeah, his memoir is mostly bullshit, and it's obvious when you read it. I mean, but it's obvious even to people who don't know it, because I love the way he opens his memoirs, like, because he has like the opening intro, he describes himself as like Efraim Diveroli with a square jaw and handsome by anyone's
like a
standards.
superhero.
He calls himself handsome. It's an autobiography, right? Yeah. Handsome by anyone's standards, his own line for himself. But so yeah, I mean, like,
love the confidence.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, zero humility.
Yeah.
Zero embarrassment about anything. So anyway, Matt told me that while Efraim was telling him all these stories, so that Matt could write this book, Matt, he kept on telling me, like, then I screwed this guy in this way, and then I screwed that guy in that way, and then and Matt was like, Efraim, you can't like just keep on burning every bridge.
Yeah.
And Efraim, and this is what Matt told me. He goes, and then Efraim turned to me and he said to me, Matt, there's a lot of bridges out there.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I never heard someone try to convince themselves that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's aware of it, and that's just how he rolls. And I don't know if he can do anything. And I know he's still the same guy, because every once in a while someone calls me up and says, oh, I did the big mistake of getting into business with him, and now I'm involved in a lawsuit and he screwed me. And and do you have any advice about how to deal with, him, in a lawsuit and all that stuff? Every on average 9-10 months I get a call like that. Yeah. So it's like a consistent thing.
He hasn't changed his ways at all.
He hasn't changed at all. He's the same scumbag he always was. Man. Yeah.
So you continue. Now you get this big bit. This is the Is this so? It's the movie says you had to go to Jordan,
right? So
because that weapons got stopped.
Yeah, so that was a separate contract.
Okay,
so that was the Beretta contract.
Okay.
That was not to Iraq. That was not to Afghanistan.
Okay.
In real life, there was a Beretta contract, but we did not go to Jordan and we did not drive through the Triangle of Death.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
You were in the car, the truck.
Yeah. So that scene from the Triangle of Death is actually true.
Okay.
But it didn't happen to us.
Okay.
It actually happened to the guy who wrote the War Dogs screenplay, a guy named Stephen Shin.
Okay.
And Stephen, this was back in like around 2003, 2004. Stephen, the reason he got the contract to write the War Dogs screenplay is because he wrote another screenplay that was considered to be very good, but never ended up getting made into a film called Iraq. And that screenplay was about these other two American government contractors who were on the ground in Iraq, and he wanted to go interview them in order to write this screenplay, but he couldn't get a commercial flight into Baghdad, so he flew into Jordan and hired a Jordanian driver to drive him to Baghdad. And his driver decided to stop in Fallujah because no one was guarding the gas station, so he got free gas. And then he got shot at by insurgents and got saved by the U.S. Army. Wow. Just, like similar to what there was in the movie.
Okay.
So that scene is actually true, but it just happened to Stephen Chin, not to us.
Okay.
And so when Stephen was writing the screenplay, Todd Phillips, the director of War Dogs, said, these guys are just sitting behind a desk too much. We need some action.
True.
And say, why don't you put your story in there?
Okay.
So that's how that.
Okay, so you didn't have to travel anywhere and go crazy.
So, I mean, we did travel a whole bunch.
Okay.
And there's a lot of things that we did that didn't make it into the movie. I mean, we went.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, we went to Paris for a trade show. The scene they show that in Vegas where we meet Bradley Cooper, right, who's playing Henry. That show actually took place in Paris.
Okay.
But I think they felt that Vegas was more like sleazy, so it was like a better kind of scene.
More
for
degenerate.
That. Yeah, more degenerate. Paris too classy for an
Yep.
arms show, so they changed the venue to Vegas. But that show that they're trying to portray in the movie actually took place. It's called Eurosatori. It took place in Paris. It takes place every year or every 2 years. And so we went to a bunch of these shows. Yeah, I went to South Africa, to India. Efraim went to Malaysia. So there was a few. We did a bunch of traveling. Okay. I've been to Jordan, but not for business.
Okay.
Because I also lived in Israel for a while, so I visited Jordan and Egypt.
But I want to know, when you guys get awarded this $300 million contract, A, how do you find out?
Right.
And B, what is the reaction?
Right. So the way they tell you is usually they send you an email and it's with the award documents that they ask you to sign. And so the way I found out, because Efraim was the guy listed on the company, so he got the email. The way I found out, I was just hanging out at my place, and Efraim calls me up, and he's like, "I've got good news and bad news." And I said, "What's the bad news?" And he says, "Well, our first task order is only $600K." And I said, "We won the contract?" He's like, "Fuck yeah, motherfucker. I'm picking you up. We're going to celebrate." And just to explain what that means, when they give you a $300 million contract or any very large contract, usually what they do is they will give you, they don't give you an order for $300 million worth of stuff at once. They give you kind of mini orders.
True.
And they call that task orders. And so legally, they were not required to give us, the way they wrote the solicitation, the way they wrote the request for a quote, was they were only legally required to give us the first task order. Okay. And so we didn't know how much that first task order was going to be. Okay. Was it going to be many millions or very small? And we bid the contract based on the $300 million amount, because if you're delivering one aircraft load versus 250 aircrafts, that's a very big price difference. And so in order to be competitive, we assumed they were going to give us the full $300 million. So but we knew it was a risk because they didn't have to give it to us legally. So when they gave us the award, and with a $600,000 task order, we were thinking, well, are they going to give us something else? Because this is not even a full aircraft load. Yeah. We can't even deliver this profitably if it's just the first task order. So we were very nervous. We're like, are they testing us? Maybe if we deliver this, then they'll give us more. But then a week later, they gave us a $50 million order. So
wow.
Yeah, so we were like, okay, they're serious.
One task
order?
order?
One task order.
50 million.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And how much were you bound to make off something like that?
So we bid it at 9% profit, but after Efraim's very skilled renegotiations, which he always did after winning a contract, we got it to be between 15 and 20% margins. Oh my God. Yeah.
You could do the math.
Yeah. So we were on track to make about $60 million worth of profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, so before the contract, how much were you making?
You mean
in general, working now with Efraim?
I was not making that much. I mean, I think up to that point, I'd only been working for 9 months before we started working on this contract. Okay. I mean, I shouldn't. When I say not much, I mean relative, right? Course. So I think I made about $50K in that 9 months.
Oh, great.
Which is livable income. I could live off that. My problem was that he kept on rolling my winnings into the next contract. So what he would say to me after I'd finished delivering on the contract, he's like, "Okay, great. We're about to win this other contract, and of course we need financing for that. So we're just gonna, I'm using my money to finance the contract. So it's only fair that you use your money to finance it. So instead of giving you a check for all the money I owe you, let's just use that and use it to finance the contract." So big red flag. And I was like, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. You are using your money to finance the contract. I guess it's fair that I should use my money to finance the contract. I guess that's true. Yeah. But what it came down to is I was living off my savings the whole time.
Okay.
So
waiting for the big payout.
And when we won the Afghan contract, I was like, okay, this is it.
And did you think you're going to be done after this too?
Yes, that was my plan. I was like, as soon as we are done delivering on this contract, I'm fucking out. Like I don't want to deal with this guy anymore. I want to go back to making music. It was, it's hard work. I would never tell anyone that government contracting is easy.
For sure.
And you can make many millions of dollars, but it is very hard work, and it's a grind, and you have to commit yourself to it. Yeah. And so and you have to be willing to lose, right? Because most of it is losing, and then occasionally you win. And when you win, it can be big, and you can make millions. Yeah. But it can be disheartening to lose and lose and lose and lose, waiting for that big payday. So when we won the Afghan contract, I was like, okay, this is my baby. This is it. I'm on track. For the Afghan contract, our deal was that I would make 25% of the profits, because the way he put it was, hey, this is, you were making 50% on the stuff that you were doing 95% of the work on. This is my bread and butter.
Okay.
So we'll do.
Did some math in his
yeah,
head.
yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm good with that. 25% of a $300 million contract. I'll be happy with my $15 million.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
That's going to set me up for life.
Okay.
I'm not going to have to worry ever. As long as I manage the money correctly, I'm not going to have to worry about working ever again.
Okay. And did he know that you were gonna exit?
I did not tell him
Okay.
that, but I'm sure he suspected it.
He had a feeling.
Yeah, but I don't think he ever. In fact, I know he never planned on paying me.
Wow.
Yeah, and the reason I know that is because Matt Cox told me, because Matt had all these conversations with him, and he on Matt's podcast, and Matt told me this when I appeared on his podcast. Matt told me that he had asked Efraim, why didn't you pay Packouz? Why didn't you pay him? And Efraim told him, and I'm surprised he admitted this, but Efraim told him, I thought when I first made that deal with Packouz that it was a pretty good deal because, hey, he'll work his ass off. If we don't succeed, I pay him nothing. And if we succeed, I'm making money anyway. So yeah, so I'll give him a percentage. Why not? But after we won, I realized, hey, I can hire someone for $100K a year. And that's a lot cheaper than the millions I'm going to have to pay Packouz, right? So why should I, why would I do this kind of deal with someone and have to pay him millions when I could get the exact same work out of someone else for a tiny fraction of the price? And of course, he didn't think, well, yeah, that is the fucking deal you made. You traded the money for the risk.
Yeah.
That is the deal.
Yeah.
But of course, in his
You can't
mind,
change after the fact.
in his mind, now we're in a situation where I don't need you anymore.
Wow.
And I could replace you with someone way, way cheaper. And so fuck you,
So they made him
yeah.
way nicer in the movie.
They made him way nicer. They made him way nicer.
Okay, so walk us through this deal and how it's going, and maybe
Yeah.
when it starts even going downhill.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the beginning, we had a whole bunch of issues in the beginning. There was a big spike in oil prices in the beginning of 2007, right when we won the Afghan contract, and all the stuff that we were doing for Afghanistan, we had to fly in on air freight. Because it's a landlocked country. Afghanistan's surrounded by unfriendly countries or unstable countries like Pakistan. Like half of Pakistan is run by warlords. Yeah. So they would love to get a big shipment of ammunition that they could take. So it was way too risky to drive it or to have it in there by rail or by truck. So we had to fly it in there, which is very expensive. But and most of the cost of air freight is fuel. So in the beginning of 2007, there was a big spike in oil prices, and we realized that the logistics, the air freight costs that we had bid to the government, they were now way higher, and we were going to lose money on this contract. And it's particularly on the AK-47 ammo, or 7.62 by 39. This ammo was the largest volume, but the lowest value on the contract. So we had like 30 different items. We had grenades, we had anti-aircraft rockets. The grenades were like $25 a grenade, but and we could fit, I think it was like 100,000 grenades on an aircraft, right? But so the value was like 2.5 million for a single aircraft load. And we had a decent margin on that because I got a great supplier for the grenades, right? Which he did not have, but which is how I earned my value that he should have paid me for.
Yes.
But in fact, most of the money we were making on the contract were from my sources. Not that he cared, but the AK-47 ammo, we had made a deal with a Swiss arms dealer named Henry, who's played by Bradley Cooper in the movie, to get the AK-47 ammo out of Albania. And that ammo we were buying for 4 cents a round, and about a little less than 300,000 rounds could fit on a plane. Okay. So it was and then we had to pay about 5-something cents in shipping. So it was about $300,000 worth. So around like 1/10 of the cost of the grenades. Yeah. And so when the oil prices went up, we didn't have enough profit margin on the AK-47 rounds in order to keep it profitable with the increase in oil prices. So we realized we're kind of fucked here, right? We needed to figure something out. And then I I had the idea. I told Efraim, you know, these ammo, this ammo is the way it's packaged. It's packaged in what they call sardine cans, which are these metal tins. And those metal tins, or they're vacuum sealed to protect from the elements and corrosion. And those those sardine cans are packaged in these heavy wooden crates. And I told Efraim, you know, if we just remove the wooden crates, that's probably going to save us a whole bunch of weight, which will lower our shipping costs. So he was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let's find out how much the crates weigh. And he goes to me, he's like, you know, we really can't trust the Albanians. They may lie to us. Let's send one of our people to go inspect it. And I was busy dealing with the government and with like 12 other suppliers around the world, and he was busy chasing new contracts because nothing was enough for him, and he wanted to go. I told him, like, Efraim, we should just concentrate on this $300 million contract. He's like, are you kidding? We're just getting started here. Everything's money. We're on a roll. You know, we're gonna get we're going for everything. And so he was busy chasing new contracts. He pretty much left me to manage the Afghan contract, more or less by myself. And so I couldn't go to Albania. So we sent one of my best friends, a guy named Alex, to Albania to inspect the stuff. Alex gets to Albania and he calls me up and he says, hey, you know, I weighed the crate and here's the numbers and all that. But you do know it's Chinese ammo, right? And I say, what are you talking about? It's in Albania, right? Why do you think it's Chinese? And he's like, oh, trust me, it's Chinese. There's Chinese markings all over the crates. And we're like, oh, and I told Efraim, and he was like, oh, fuck, we're fucked. Because,
but what's the problem with,
so why is it a problem? So our contract with the U.S. Army specifically said no Chinese ammo. It said no Chinese ammunition can be delivered under this contract, either directly or indirectly. That's what it said. And the reason they put that in there is because there's an arms embargo against China. The U.S. put an arms embargo against China in 1989 because in 1989 there was the Tiananmen Square massacre, which was there was a big pro-democracy protest in the center of Beijing in Tiananmen Square, and it went on for a while. There was maybe tens of thousands of students, of university students protesting for democracy. And eventually the Chinese government rolled tanks into the square and killed a whole bunch
famous
of them.
picture.
There's the famous picture of the tank man, they call it. The guy standing in front of a line of tanks. And they put soldiers there, and they pretty much they killed, nobody knows how many people they killed, but they killed a lot of people, and it was on live international television. And so this became a big political controversy, to put it lightly. And because of that, they placed the Chinese on an arms embargo. So it's illegal for U.S. Citizens and companies to buy or sell military items with China. So because of that, they put no Chinese ammo, either directly or indirectly, in the contract. Now the thing is that the ammo that was in Albania, it was given to the Albanians by the Chinese in the 70s, because they made an alliance. And if you had bought a Chinese ammo in 1988 and you import it into the United States legally, right? In 1990, you could still sell that ammo, right? Because that was legal ammo when you bought it, so it remains legal ammo, even though new ammo you can't buy from China, right?
So it's when you purchase it.
It's when you purchase it, when it leaves China, right? So the Chinese sent it to Albania in the 70s while it was legal. So this ammo did not violate the embargo, but it did violate the terms of our commercial contract with the Army. Because the Army did not say you cannot deliver ammunition that violates the embargo. They say you cannot deliver Chinese ammunition directly or indirectly, period. That was it. So we realized it violated our contract, and we thought to ourselves, well, maybe we should just ask them for a waiver, right? You know, we could say, hey guys, we realize you probably meant ammo that violates the embargo. This ammo does not violate the embargo. Can you give us a written permission in order to deliver on this ammo? And they were pressuring us to deliver as quickly as possible because fighting season in Afghanistan was starting. They only fight during the nice weather months in Afghanistan because it's big mountains with a lot of snow in the winter. You can't really
Okay.
You can't do your guerrilla tactics like that. It's very difficult. So spring was coming and fighting season was starting, and our Afghan allies were running out of ammo, and the army was leaning on us like, when are you gonna get the ammo? When are you gonna get the ammo? Wow. And so we realized, hey, you guys, you need the ammo. If we were thinking, I mean, if we need to change sources, it's going to be another few months because there's a lot of licensing required to move military goods. You need to get the export permit, the end user certificate, flyover permission over every country you go over with the goods. So a lot of paperwork, and these countries tend to move slow in processing these things. So we thought maybe we should just ask the army for a waiver. But then we thought, well, they could give us a waiver, and maybe they probably will give us a waiver, but they could also say something along the lines of, it's not really fair to all your competitors, who were very upset that you won the contract, by the way. They're like, General Dynamics was furious. I mean, we know because we actually talked to that head of their department, their brokering department. We met him at a trade show, and he felt very confident they were going to win. And then we kind of like yanked the contract away from them. They were very upset. And so big companies like that, they tend to sue the government when they feel like they've been wronged, and the government tries to avoid that. Okay. So we thought, well, if they allow this, maybe they're going to be worried that if they allow it, that they're going to get sued by General Dynamics because they weren't allowed to bid this ammo, because General Dynamics might have known that it was originally Chinese and they were following the terms of the solicitation of the bid. True. And so we were afraid that the army would take away our contract and put it out for open bid again, and they'd be like, hey, you guys could bid on it again, but just follow it. Everyone's going to be on an equal footing. And we didn't want to have the chance of losing a $300 million contract. So we decided to say, instead of telling them about it, why don't we not tell them about it?
Okay.
And in order so they don't find out, let's hire someone to repackage the ammunition, which we were going to do anyway because to save on the weight, which the weight of the wooden crates was enough to get us back into profitability. So we were very lucky. But now that we realized that it was all Chinese ammo, we realized we had to get rid of the metal tins too, because the metal tins had Chinese markings on them. So we found a cardboard box manufacturer in Albania, and we hired him to manufacture the boxes as well as supply workers to do the whole repackaging operation. And we repackaged it in sealed plastic bags to prevent corrosion, and then in these thick cardboard boxes packaged on pallets. And we got permission from the receiving officer in Kabul, the U.S. Army officer that signs off on the shipments when they arrive. We told them, we're going to be repackaging this in order to inspect the ammo.
Nice.
Like the good guys.
Yes, exactly. That's the reason.
Go.
And he said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We're very happy that you're doing the extra inspection. So yeah, that's fine. That new packaging configuration is approved. And so he signed off on it. And so we started doing the repackaging, and everything was going fine. We were doing 3 flights of this ammo into Kabul every week. Wow. And there's 45 tons each. And that was on top of the grenade shipments and the rocket shipments. So we were doing between 3 and 6 flights per week. Wow. And things were rolling. And Efraim decides, I think I can make more money on this.
Of course.
And so he talks to the box guy, and he says, hey, why don't you... The box guy told us that he was friends with some people in the Ministry of Defense in Albania. And Efraim asked him, why don't you find out what the Ministry of Defense is paying for our ammo? Because we were going through the Swiss guy, through Henry and Heinrich Thome. And I think they changed his name in the movie to Gerard or something like that. But... so we were going through, he had brokered the deal for us with the Albanian government. So Efraim wanted to know what's Henry's margin on this. So the box guy finds out from his cousin or something that worked in the Ministry of Defense that the Albanian government was receiving 2 cents a round, and we were paying 4 cents. So Efraim got pissed. Oh my God. He's like, he's doubling the price, that motherfucker. And I'm like, yeah, we're also making around 2 cents a round after shipping. So what's the difference? And he's like, yeah, but who cares? I mean, we got to get rid of this guy. We got to make more money on this. We took all the risk and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I'm flying to Albania and I'm going to try to cut Henry out. And I said, well, maybe you shouldn't do that. I mean, Henry's been a good source and he can, done deals for us all over the place. And he's like, fuck him, you know? And so he's like, okay, this is what I want you to do. He says to me, he's like, I want you to take all those other quotes that you got from all the other sources, and I want you to doctor the quotes to make it look like we got much lower prices.
Wow.
And so I did that, you know, PDF editing software, not too difficult. And I printed them out, the new quotes with the new lower prices. And he flies over to Albania and he talks to the Albanian official in charge of the organization that does the exporting, and he says, look, I got these much better quotes, you need to give me. And the guy looks at his papers, he's like, that's all fake, don't show me that shit.
No way.
He knew right away.
He knew right away.
Was it because the numbers were too exaggerated?
He's
knew.
like, this guy knows the industry.
Yeah.
He knows what other people are selling it for. He knows that's all bullshit.
Yeah, so
he
big
knows
mistake.
he's got the best price. And the reason the Albanians had the best price is because they were, first of all, they were one of the most armed places on earth at the time, because they were during the Cold War, their dictator during the Cold War he had taken himself out of an alliance with the Soviet Union because he didn't feel like they were true communists, and he allied himself with the Chinese, and so he thought the Soviets were going to invade him. And he also thought that NATO was going to invade him too, because he's communist. Sure. So he thought the two big superpowers of the world were both going to invade his tiny little country. And so he armed himself to the teeth. He built this huge network of bunkers, tunnels, and throughout the country, to be safe from bombardment, and filled it with weapons and ammunition. Wow. And his plan was what he called total war, where every man, woman, and child becomes a soldier and everyone fights to the death. That was his brilliant plan. So, of course, the war never came, and the Cold War ended. And at this time in 2007, Albania wanted to join NATO. And NATO uses a completely different standard for the types of weapons that they use. So all their old Soviet weapons and ammo are completely irrelevant and obsolete. And so NATO said, yeah, you could join, but one of the requirements is that you need to get rid of all that Soviet ammo and weapons, right? They didn't want it falling into, African warlords' hands or whoever. And so the Albanians were actually going to have to pay to dismantle it. They were happy to sell it for anything they could get. Okay. So they knew they had the best price. They knew what the prices out there were, and they knew they were the best. And so they refused to give Efraim a better price. Efraim kept on bugging him, as he does, right? Eventually they say to him, look, we know that you are repackaging this ammo, right? And that you hired this Albanian company to do the repackaging. Why don't you let us do the repackaging? And they were going to use soldiers from the Albanian army, which they were not going to pay anything to. Yeah. So they were going to it was going to be 100% profit for them. And we'll get that contract, and we're going to make some money on that. And then we can give you a little discount on the ammo. Okay. And Efraim's like, yeah, that guy's fired. You're hired. Great.
Easy.
Yeah, easy. That's perfect. The guy who he fired calls me up and he says, hey, I understand it's just business, but I got stuck with $20,000 worth of cardboard boxes. Can you at least buy the boxes from me? You guys need them anyway. And so I said, yeah, sure, that's reasonable. So I call up Efraim and I say, hey, can you just arrange for the Albanians to buy these boxes? And Ephraim's like, yeah, sure. He doesn't do anything, right? Another week goes by, the guy calls me up again. He's like, hey, I haven't heard anything about the boxes. I said, oh, let me see what's going on. And Ephraim's like, yeah, they don't want to deal with them, so just fuck them, let them go. I said, okay, well, maybe we should just pay him $20,000, because he got stuck with these boxes. And Ephraim's like, nah, fuck him. We don't need to pay him $20. You don't need to pay him anything. What's he gonna do, right? He got really bad, right? And he decided to do something. He calls up, we found out later, of course, didn't know this at the time, but he called up the New York Times. And he told them what we were doing. Oh my God. And then he calls up the FBI and tells them what we were doing. And his big mistake is he calls up the local Albanian press and he tells them that Albanian politicians are getting kickbacks from this contract, which was probably true. That's probably how Henry arranged the deal, and probably why he had such a large markup, because he needed room for the Albanian politicians. And it's also probably why the Albanians refused to cut Henry out of the deal, because that's how they were getting their cut. And but of course we didn't know that, and we were glad not to know it, because it would have been very illegal for us to know that, because it's illegal to be doing business where foreign government officials are getting bribes, even if it's not U.S. government officials.
Yeah.
If you're a U.S. citizen, you can get charged by the United States for bribing foreign officials. So we were happy not to know about that. but Costa, which is the box guy, he told the Albanian press that this was happening. And then about 2 weeks later, he ends up dead.
Wow.
Yeah, they found him in this empty field where it appeared like his car had run him over. Yeah, and he was like 30 feet like from the road. It was a very suspicious situation. Yeah, very suspicious. But we kept on rolling, and we didn't know about any of this at the time. And then Efraim comes back from Albania, and he walks into my office and he says, at the end of the day, when at that point we had about 15 people working for us, because it started kind of like a boiler room, because he had bought some ammo overseas and he was selling it into the commercial market. So he had people doing that. He was also chasing a whole bunch of other contracts. And so we had about 15 people working for us at that point. And so he comes into my office, and after everyone else had left, and he tells me, he's like, a lot of the guys around the office are saying that you're not pulling your weight around here anymore. And I said, not pulling my weight? What are you talking about? He's like, like the Afghan contract's going good, we're delivering like clockwork. Like, what's the problem? He's like, yeah, the Afghan contract's going good, but you're not helping out on the Iraq contracts. And I said, well, I'm not part of the Iraq contracts. Our deal is that I get a commission on what I work on. I'm not like a salaried employee where I work on everything. He's like, yeah, but if those Iraq contracts fail, we can get banned from doing business with the government, and then the Afghan contract fails too. So if you want to save the Afghan contract, you have to work on the Iraq contracts too. Wow. And I said, well, are you going to give me a percentage of the Iraq contracts? He's like, oh, don't be ridiculous. You didn't help us win those contracts. So I'm like, so then why should I work on them? He's like, to save the company. I'm like, well, are you going to give me a piece of the company? He's like, he's like, okay, I'll tell you what. I would never do this for anyone else. I own 100% of AEY, and I was planning to keep it that way. But you're my best friend, David. And I feel like if anyone deserves it, you deserve it. So I'll tell you what, only for you, I'll give you a $100,000 a year executive salary and 1% of AEY. And I said to him, well, I'm getting 25% of the Afghan contract, and that's going to make us probably like 90 to 95% of the money for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I think I'll stay with our original deal. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. And he said, well, take it or leave it. Oh, you either take that or it's nothing. And I said, well, in that case, I'll see you in court, you piece of shit.
I was going to say, did you have contracts or
we
agreements?
We actually did have a contract. We had a written contract. Unfortunately for me, it was a handwritten contract, so it's not something drawn up by lawyers or anything, but it was a contract signed by both of us. And when because he kept on renegotiating with me like he did everyone else. Mm-hmm. And eventually I was like, okay, I'll accept this renegotiation, but we're putting everything in writing this time, and this is the end of it. And so we did that. And I was planning, I tried to scan the contract to save it, but my scanner was broken. And so I was like, okay, I need to get my scanner fixed. I put the contract on my dining room table, and just so like I'd get it scanned as soon as possible. And about 3 days later, it disappeared. And he was the only guy who was coming to my apartment at that time. So I didn't see him do it, obviously, but I very strongly suspect that he took the contract.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then, okay. So at that point, you say, I'll see you in court.
So I'll see you in court. I walk out. And that was a really tough time for me, because like I realized I'd been living off my savings up until this point, because he kept on rolling my winnings into the next contract. And so I was starting to run low on money, and my daughter was about 5-6 months at the time. So I had a kid to support. And I went from thinking I was about to be a multimillionaire to about to go literally bankrupt and maybe not being able to afford rent. Yeah. And so it went like from the top of the world down to the bottom. So that was a really tough time. I was like really, really depressed for like a good 2 weeks, and talked to some lawyers, and I was getting ready to sue him, and then we were negotiating, and then we came up with an agreement where he would give me like, I think it was about $300,000. I decided to accept it, even though he owed me millions, because I realized if I took him to court, it would take me years to win.
Yeah.
And money.
Which I didn't have. And I felt, you know what, at least $300K will give me breathing room. I won't have to worry about rent or food for the next few years. Yeah. And it'll give me a chance to start something new, and to put this thing behind me. And so I agreed to take that. The day that we were going to sign that agreement, I get a call early in the morning, and it's the secretary from our office, who I was on very good terms with everyone. I mean, I was considered the nice boss. You know? He was an asshole. He would like walk into the office and start screaming at it. Well, I don't pay you to fucking talk. You know, get back to fucking work and make me some goddamn money. You know, like he was like that kind of guy. Like I'm not exaggerating. Like,
wow.
Like
Good cop, bad cop. You guys.
Yeah, I mean, not on purpose. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
I'm just a nice guy.
Yeah.
Naturally a nice guy. He's naturally an asshole.
Yeah.
So you know, I was on good terms with everyone, and so the secretary from the office calls me up, and I had been gone for about a month and a half, 2 months at this point, but I was still on good terms with everyone. So secretary calls me up, and she says, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, but the feds just raided the office, and they told everyone to step away from their computers and leave the office, and they're boxing up all the documents and all our computers." And I'm like, holy fuck! They know about the Chinese. We're all fucked.
So
you knew right away.
So that was the first thing I thought of. We're all fucked. And so I call up my buddy Alex, who I'm like best friends with since we were like third grade, and he was still in Albania, managing the whole repackaging operation and everything. And he was just getting paid a salary. He wasn't like getting a commission or anything. And I call him up and I tell him, hey, you know, the feds just raided the office. And he's like, what? Like, he didn't realize it was like a serious thing. Yeah. Because he thought, I mean, it's just a commercial issue. You know, it's like, if anything, I mean, okay, they sue you for breach of contract. It's not like, we're not breaking the law here. We're not violating the embargo. Okay. So he thought it wasn't like a big deal. But then he's like, what? The feds raided the office? Like, oh, what the fuck, you know? And so he calls, he's like, okay, I'm going to call up Efraim and find out what's going on. So Alex calls up, he calls up Danny, who's Efraim. Once I quit, he replaced me with a guy named Danny. Okay. And who he eventually screwed over too. And
sure,
he
of course.
Literally does this with everybody. Yeah. I'm not even exaggerating. Yeah. He does it with. It seems like that. I've never met a single person who's had a good business experience with him. Not one.
That's insane.
Not one. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing he makes so much money like that, but he manages. It's amazing he's not dead, to be honest.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's
that.
what I was about to say.
Yeah, that's the most amazing thing about it, because he's made a lot of enemies, and some enemies he really shouldn't have made. You know, so
they raid the office.
So they raid the office, and Alex calls up Danny, and he tells Danny, he wants to feel him out, right? So he tells Danny, he's like, hey, you know, I'm getting another aircraft landing this afternoon. I'm going to need these documents to do the export permit. Can you get me those documents? And because he knew that they had all been kicked out of the office by the feds, so he knew they didn't have access to anything. So Danny, Alex told me this. He hears Danny cover the mouthpiece of his phone. And he hears him whispering to Efraim, hey, Efraim, it's Alex. He needs these documents. What should I tell him? Wow. And he hears Efraim whisper back, tell him there was a bomb threat in the office, and so we don't have access to the office now. We had to leave the office because there's a bomb threat, and we'll get it to him, but we just can't get it to him now. Yeah, tell him there's a bomb threat. So Danny gets on the phone. There was a bomb threat. We can't get you those documents. And Alex is thinking, why is he lying to me? Yeah. Right? Why doesn't he tell me the truth? Maybe it's because Efraim is planning to throw him under the bus and blame everything on him. Yeah. Ephraim is going to say, oh, I had no idea any of this was happening. Alex was doing it without my knowledge or permission. You know, and so Alex says, well, I'm not going to go down for this motherfucker. And so he's on the next flight home. Okay. And so Alex and I both hire attorneys, and our attorneys tell us, look, they don't raid the office unless they have some evidence or some reasonable cause to do to get a search warrant approved by a judge. Why don't you guys look in your emails and see what kind of evidence or whatever it is you're worried about, see what kind of evidence there is.
You knew.
And I mean, we knew that this was shady.
Yeah.
We didn't know exactly what level of legality it was exactly, but we knew that it wasn't 100. We knew we didn't want people to know about it, right? So we look in our emails, like do search for Chinese ammunition and repackage. And it turned out that we were not careful enough because there was lots of very incriminating. So at first, when we decided to do the repackaging, Efraim said, okay, we're only talking over the phone. Nobody's doing any emails about this. But then there was a lot of like deadlines and everyone's in a different time zone. And eventually Efraim starts emailing, okay, just make sure you get rid of all the packaging with the Chinese ammo. He was very specific about it in the fucking email, writing it out. And one of our investors, Ralph, actually, he's in the movie. Ralph, though he's different in real life, but Ralph in the movie's a Jewish laundromat owner. In real life, he was a Mormon machine gun factory owner. So yeah, a little bit more relevant, and I think they just wanted to keep with the Jewish theme in the movie. But so Ralph like sent emails to all of us with like a picture of like a wooden crate with Chinese lettering on it, and with instructions on how to sand off the Chinese lettering.
Oh my God.
And he had like step-by-step instructions with pictures of how it looks like afterwards. And I was like, okay, yeah, there is zero chance that we're gonna claim like we didn't know what we were doing, or that we had any excuse whatsoever. There's very blatant written emailed evidence of all of it. And so our lawyers told us, well, in that case, if there's zero chance you're going to win in court, then you might as well cooperate and at least get credit for that. You'll get a much lighter sentence if you cooperate than if you fight them. And also, if you fight them, you need about $200,000 to $300,000. Do you have that? No, you don't have that? Well, then cooperate. So, we
didn't have much options. Really.
Yeah, we didn't have much options.
Okay.
It was really the only option. So, and we were going to lose anyway. I mean, we knew that. So the feds interview us separately, of course. And the way they work it is they tell us, okay, tell us everything you know and don't leave anything out. And if we think that you left anything out, or if you changed anything, and if we think you did it on purpose, you get zero credit for cooperating. And we're going to go harder on you because we're going to tell the judge that you tried to deceive us.
Wow.
So we're going to go even harder on you. Okay. So you better tell us everything. And so, of course, your life is on the line. You tell them everything. And they take notes and all that. And at the end of the interview, they tell me, just in case you were wondering, when we raided the office, we found a to-do list in Efraim's handwriting on his desk. And one of the items on it was repackaged Chinese ammo.
Come on.
Damn it.
Come on.
So I mean, they had pretty much every bit of evidence they needed. So anyway, and they told us, Alex and me, they told us, you guys are not the target of this investigation. Okay. I mean, David, you haven't worked for AUI for 2 months and you didn't make a penny from it. Alex, you're a salaried employee and now you came forward. And so we're going to do our best not to charge you at all. So you're not going to be charged. So we're like, great, because we don't have money to defend ourselves anyway. Right. Yeah. So then we don't hear anything from them for like 6 months. And we're like, well, maybe they're just not going to charge anyone. Maybe they're not going to do anything.
They forgot about it.
Or they forgot, or they realized they didn't have a strong case, or I don't know why, but they didn't do anything. And about 6 months later, and I think it was March 28th, 2008, a day that should live in infamy, in my life anyway. There was a front page article posted by the New York Times. With a picture of rusty ammunition next to mine and Efraim's mugshots.
Come on.
And the way the article was written, it implied that all the ammunition that we were delivering was very low quality, rusty, and defective, and that we were putting all our Afghan allies at risk by delivering this junk. And they made a big deal that we were very young. We were in our early 20s, and how could the Bush administration be so incompetent to entrust a $300 million contract in the future of the war on terror to these couple of kids who they found, smoke weed, because we had, the way they got our mugshots is we had been arrested, I think on Efraim's 21st birthday, because he had gotten into a fight with a valet guy in his building, and the security guard from his building lied and said we started it, even though it was the valet guy who started it. And so we got arrested, and they found some weed on him, and so there was in the record that we smoked weed, and so we were called the stoner arms dealers in the media. And so this article, and the rusty ammo, just to set the record straight, was it wasn't even the Chinese ammo. It was Bulgarian ammo that Efraim had bought sight unseen. He bought like 30,000 rounds, it was a tiny amount out of the hundreds of millions we were delivering. And it was offered to him at a very, very low price. And it wasn't worth flying over there to inspect it because it was such a small amount. And at the time, we had some extra room on the aircraft because our grenades were coming out of Bulgaria. And so Efraim decided, you know what, this stuff is cheap enough. I'll just buy it sight unseen, stick it on the airplane. If they pay us for it, great. We made an enormous margin. If they don't pay us for it, no big deal. I'm not paying that much for it anyway. They took one look at it. It was complete garbage. They're like, we're not issuing this to soldiers. We're not paying you for this. They refused the shipment. But of course, Afghanistan has no ammunition recycling facilities. So they had nowhere to put it. They weren't going to pay to ship it back. So they just stuck it. They moved it to the side of the airport just sat there. And so when the New York Times journalists came to investigate and started asking around about AEY ink and stuff we delivered, they pointed him at that because that was the only stuff that was lying around.
Okay.
And so he got a bunch of pictures of that garbage, and that's what they published on the front page of the New York Times. And of course, to make it extra scandalous, the New York Times strongly implied that most of the stuff we were delivering was this quality, which it was not.
Sure.
So that became an enormous scandal that the New York Times, Congress held hearings. There's YouTube videos out there of Congress with one of those tripods with the big papers. I forgot what they're called. Yeah. With like pictures of our mugshots. These gentlemen over here were hired by the Bush administration. It's a couple of kids from Miami. Were entrusted with a $300 million contract. Yeah.
You can make it sound bad.
They made it sound as bad as possible because it became a political thing. And Congress was actually planning on having us they were planning on deposing us to force us to testify on C-SPAN and in Congress. And our lawyers told them, well, obviously they're going to plead the fifth because this is an ongoing criminal investigation. So they decided not to go through the whole circus. And so we didn't testify, which a little disappointed me. It would have been kind of cool to testify in Congress and like a mobster, I plead the fifth.
There you go.
But yeah, so this article got reprinted in like over 300 newspapers all over the world because it got put out to the Associated Press network. And I had a Google alert on my name, and it kept on popping up in like in Dubai and in New Delhi and in London, and pretty much every major city in the world's newspaper republished this article because it was just such an entertaining article. And so it was a worldwide story. And 2 days later, after that article came out, the Army put out a statement saying, we had no idea any of this was happening. We are shocked and appalled, and we are canceling the contract with AEY. It turned out later that through courts, through the court records, because this ended up going to trial, Ralph took it to trial, that the Army was informed by the Justice Department right after the raid. After the Justice Department found out about the Chinese ammo, they sent an email. These emails came out in court. They sent an email to the U.S. Army saying, this ammunition is originally Chinese. You may want to stop taking delivery on it. And the Army replied, that this ammunition is critical to the mission in Afghanistan. And if the Justice Department wants us to stop taking delivery on it, we're going to need a letter requesting that from the Attorney General of the United States, which is the head of the Justice Department, cabinet member, right? And that letter never came. So they kept on taking delivery on it for 6 months after they found out that it was Chinese. So they had no problem.
Wow.
Which really makes us kick ourselves in the ass, because we realized if we had just asked them, can you sign off on this?
Would've changed
probably
everything.
would have. They probably would have. I would say 95% they would have. But especially at that time, because they were so desperate for the ammo. But yeah, unfortunately for us, we did it the shady way, and that really bit us in the ass. So the Justice Department, like 2 days after the Army cancels the contract, they contact my lawyer and they say, hey, you know, due to all the very intense political situation, the political fallout from this, we're going to have to move this case forward. And unfortunately, David and Alex and Ralph, and as well as obviously Efraim, were so involved in the scheme, we can't charge just Efraim. We're going to have to charge David and Alex and Ralph as well. So they charged us, and the way they charged us, what they charged us with, was, because it wasn't a violation of the embargo, right?
Yeah.
What they charged us with, what they said was, you know, when you guys delivered this ammo, with every aircraft load, you provided a document, which you're required to do, called a certificate of conformance, right? A COC. And each certificate of conformance on it listed the type of ammunition, the quantity of ammunition, the year it was manufactured, and most crucially, the place of origin. And on that document, you put place of origin, Albania. And you knew it was China. And not only did you know it was China, you had a whole operation to hide that it was China.
Yeah.
So each document that you submitted to the government with this knowingly false information is an act of fraud. And you guys delivered 71 aircraft loads of this stuff.
Oh my God.
So that's 71 acts of fraud. And each act can get you up to 5 years in prison. So you're looking at 355 years in prison. Now, if you plead guilty, the prosecutor has the option to combine 71 acts into one. So the most you can get is 5 years if the judge is feeling really bad, really angry at you. But we're going to go to bat for you with the judge and tell the judge that you pled guilty and that you've been cooperative, and they should give you on the low end of the guidelines, which could be a year, could be nothing, could be just probation, right? So what's your choice, right? Do you want to do maybe probation or maybe 355 years in prison? And if you fight us, you do need that $300K, right, to pay your lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Do you have that? So
Crazy.
So what's going on in your head at this moment?
So at this moment, I'm thinking, I'm fucked. I'm really fucked. I could possibly spend decades in prison. And my kid is like a year old at this point. I could miss my entire kid's childhood, and it's really made me realize about what's important in life.
Yeah.
It's some things are just not worth all the money in the world, and so of course I pled guilty. I mean, wasn't really an option, but still I thought maybe I'll do 5 years, right? And that's a good chunk of time to spend in prison. 5 years is no joke. So I was scared shitless, of course. And my lawyer told me, it's really up to the judge. So do everything you can to make yourself look good to the judge. So the judge goes easy on you. So, of course, the Justice Department told me, you can't do the arms business right now. I mean, obviously, right? Yeah. Which really sucked, actually, because once again, things seemed to fall apart for me at the last fucking second, right? Where after leaving AEY, even after the Justice Department raided his office, they kind of disappeared after that raid. They didn't tell us, oh, you can't do this or that. So I opened up my own company, and I figured, hey, I know how to do government contracting. I'll do it myself. I've got all the contacts. I know all the info. And so I started my own company, and I was bidding on a contract. And in February, around March, actually, when this article came out, right before the day before the article came out, literally the day before, I was informed by the Army that they wanted to do a audit for a contract I was bidding on, which meant I was like in the final running. And this contract, I had a really good sources for anti-aircraft ammo. And I had a really, really good source for it. And my margins were awesome on this contract because I knew the industry really well. I knew Efraim didn't have this contact because I had met this contact, this source, in one of the trade shows that I had gone to without him. And I was set to make like $1.5 million on this contract. $1.5 million, all for me. Yeah,
So days away, like days
away from winning. I'd still have to deliver on it, of course, but I was days away from winning this contract. And this contract was going to set me, this was going to set me for life. I mean, not for all life, but like, it was going to set me for the next, good stint. So, the next day, and one of the things, the way it works is you do deliveries, right? Then usually the government pays you 30 days later, right? But you need to do all the deliveries within a certain time frame. So one of the ways you can finance this is you can do what they call a factoring agreement with the bank, which means that when you deliver on a shipment, you take that receiving document that the government signs and gives you to prove that you've delivered the item satisfactorily, and you can give that to the bank, and the bank will front you the money that is coming to you 30 days later. And the way it works is the bank gets paid directly by the government, so they're not at risk of losing the money. But then you could use that money for the next shipment, so you can roll the money into the next shipment. And so you need like a fraction of the money that you would need if you were financing the entire thing. And so I had a deal with a factoring deal with Wells Fargo. They agreed to factor this contract. And the next day, when the New York Times article came out, I get a call from Wells Fargo. And they say, hey, we just read this article about you. And due to the intense political situation, and we will have to withdraw our factoring offer. So we're very sorry, but we can't do this now. And so because of that, my contract fell apart, and I lost out on what was going to make me like $1.5 million. And then when the Justice Department decided to charge me with fraud, they said, okay, you're going to plead guilty. One of the agreements, you sign what they call a plea agreement, right? Where you admit all your wrongdoing, and the government for their end agrees in writing that they're going to go to bat for you with the judge, that they're going to recommend the judge you get on the lowest end of the guidelines that the judge feels is reasonable. Okay. And one of the things that the government, that the Justice Department wanted me to do as part of this agreement was to leave the arms business. Of course. They didn't want me to continue because it just doesn't look good to a jury that you're still an arms dealer, and you're
could make the same
again.
mistake.
Exactly. Or exactly. They don't want me to get into further trouble. And I'm like one of their witnesses. They don't want me to get in trouble, jeopardize their case. Yeah. So sucked for me, but I was like, okay, obviously nothing's more important than staying out of prison. There you go. So I shut my company down. I went back to school, I switched from chemistry to mechanical engineering, and even started doing massages again because I had to make money somehow. And I got a job working for a nonprofit food kitchen because my lawyer told me that would look good to the judge. So, okay. I was, being very careful not to speed. I was being very careful not to do anything that was even possibly illegal, because one of the things that's in the plea agreement is if you commit another crime, you invalidate the plea agreement. Yeah, meaning that nothing. Yeah, because how are the prosecutors going to go to the judge and say that you're a reformed good citizen now if you committed another crime while awaiting sentencing? Yeah. So obviously I was scared, and I was a goody two shoes, right? Ralph decides to fight it in court. He decides that Alex also pled guilty, and eventually Efraim pleads guilty too, but Ralph decides to fight it in court. Because Ralph decides to fight it in court, as part of our plea agreement, we're required to be witnesses in his trial if called upon. So because we're required to be witnesses in his trial, they delay, and they want to have leverage over us. They delay our sentencing until after his trial.
Okay.
Now his trial, he actually had 2 trials because the first one was a hung jury, and then they got him on the second one. They convicted him on the second one. His entire trial process took 3 years. So we were in limbo for 3 years, where we couldn't leave the Southern District of Florida. So I couldn't like leave South Florida. Couldn't couldn't do any work in the arms industry, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Efraim, for his part, right, likes to live a little more dangerously. So he decides to continue in the arms business, but just under someone else's name, right, as he does. So he got one of his newest lackey. It wasn't Danny at this point because he had already fucked him over, right? He got Danny's replacement and registered a new company under this new guy's name, and was trying to do these commercial deals, right? He was trying to import like these magazines from Korea, and he's trying to do this deal with a manufacturer in northern or central Florida, and the gun dealer, it was actually, I think it was Knight Industries, who wanted to do like a branding deal with them, and so Knight Industries was interested in doing this deal, but Efraim is a control freak. So when it came down to negotiating the terms, he couldn't let his new lackey do the negotiating. He had to get on the phone himself. So he had to introduce himself, and he gave his real name, and the guy ended up looking him up and realized who he was, that he already pled guilty to this, you know, arms related thing. And so this guy that he's trying to do business with probably assumed that he's trying to entrap him into something to get a reduction on his sentence. So he calls up the gun dealer calls up the ATF, right, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms Administration, and tells them, these are the guys who regulate the gun industry in the United States, and he tells them, hey, I've got this convicted gun dealer trying to do a gun deal with me. What should I do? And they say, oh, that's really interesting. Why don't you introduce one of our undercover agents to him as your business partner? And so he does that. The undercover agent tells Efraim, hey, you know, why don't you, I got to do this deal face to face. You know, that's the way I do business. So why don't you come up to Central Florida? Because he knew he wasn't allowed to leave South Florida as part of the agreement, right? And we can shake on this and do this deal. And Ephraim's, yeah, sure, I'll come up. The undercover agent says, yeah, you know, I know you're a gun guy. Why don't you bring up some guns and we'll go shooting? And Ephraim's like, hey, you know, like I'm awaiting sentencing on this thing. I can't bring up guns. And the agent keeps on trying to pressure. Why don't you bring up? Come on, let's do it. You know, let's bring it. Yeah, don't worry about it. You know, you just bring up some guns. Ephraim, to his credit, refuses to bring guns.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Yeah. But wait until the end of the story. So he drives up to Orlando, which he wasn't allowed to do, and he meets the undercover agent. Undercover agent, you know, pops the trunk of his car, and says, "Hey, check this out. I just got the latest HK handgun. It's got these really cool, you know, sights on it." And Ephraim's like, "Oh, I heard about that. I wanted to try that thing. Let me see that." Picks up the gun. Oh, this thing is awesome. Let's go fire off a few rounds at the local range. And he tells the undercover agent, it's like, because what can I say? You know, once a gun runner, always a gun runner. Am I right?
God, like the worst thing to say, literally.
And the undercover agent slaps a pair of cuffs on him. Says, "You're under arrest. You're a felon in possession of a firearm."
Wow.
Because it's illegal for someone convicted of a felony to be in possession of a firearm. You can get up to 10 years in prison for that. So he gets arrested. And because he violated the terms of his bond in South Florida, they don't give him a bail option in Central Florida, because he obviously doesn't respect the terms of bail. So he spends like a year in like county lockup, which is not fun, while he's awaiting sentencing for the arms thing. He could have gotten a total of 5 years for the fraud charge and another 10 years for the gun charge. So he could have served a total of 15 years, but he hired the best lawyers in Miami. He spent literally $2 million, I've heard, on lawyers. And he got it negotiated down to a total of 4 years, and he got out in like 3.5.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when did you all get sentenced? What year was that?
That was 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, so the way the movie got made was while the New York Times article came out, when the New York Times article came out, my phone started ringing off the hook.
Of course.
Like every journalist in the world wanted to talk to me, and my lawyer told me, do not talk to any journalists.
Yeah.
This is the worst time. Do not do that. The government doesn't want you to talk to any journalists. Your lawyer doesn't want you to talk to any journalists. You're just going to get yourself in trouble. So I just ignored all the phone calls. But then I get a voicemail, and it's from a journalist from Rolling Stone. And I'm a musician. I call the journalist back, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'd really love to talk to you. I'm a musician. I've always dreamed about being written about in Rolling Stone. Not necessarily for this, but still cool.
I'll take it.
And so the journalist, a guy named Guy Lawson, he's like, I used to be a lawyer. Let me talk to your lawyer. Maybe we can work something out.
Yeah.
So he talks to my lawyer, and he commits to my lawyer that he won't publish anything until all legal jeopardy has passed. And so my lawyer says, okay, if he's willing to commit to that, then you can talk to him. So I give him a bunch of interviews. He also interviews Alex. He interviewed Efraim like a couple times, but then Efraim decided that he wanted to do his own thing. He didn't want to be part of anyone else's thing. Yeah. So, and then to his credit, Guy sat on the story for 3 years while awaiting from 2008 to 2011 until we were sentenced. And after we were sentenced, there's really nothing else they could do. So the New York Times, not the New York Times, Rolling Stone published the article. It's one of the longest articles Rolling Stone ever published. Yeah. And it became like a pretty big sensation because Guy had done a lot of investigating. He also interviewed people on the government side. Wow. So he got like the government's like perspective and like what was going on, which we weren't aware of. So it was very interesting stuff. And Todd Phillips, the director of the Hangover movies, and after War Dogs, he made Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. And so Todd Phillips was in the middle of making Hangover 2 at the time and realized, hey, this could be a really cool movie. So he optioned the rights for the story. And then he was going to make War Dogs next, but he decided to make Hangover 3 because that was a sure moneymaker. Yeah. And so he does Hangover 3. Okay. And then he decides to make War Dogs, starts filming in 2015. It came out in 2016. And War Dogs was his transition from comedy, from Hangover, to drama, Joker. And we thought when he optioned the rights that we were like, oh, he's going to make like another Hangover movie. I'm going to he's going to portray me as like being passed out from drugs in a hotel room next to a tiger or something, And I'm like, he's going to make me look like an idiot. But I was actually very happy with how the movie came out because he was trying to transition his career into a more serious direction. True. War Dogs is more of what they call it, a dramedy. Mm-hmm. It's a half comedy, half drama. Yeah. So I thought it was like a good mix. I thought they portrayed me pretty fairly. I'm a very nice guy in the movie. It's very true. I'm a very nice guy. Absolutely accurate. I have great hair in the movie. Absolutely accurate.
So how was the process of making the movie? For like how in depth did you get with, let's say, the director and the actors?
Yeah. So. The screenwriter, Stephen Chin, he flew to... So it's actually very interesting. There's a wide range of how Hollywood does things, right? So some some actors will follow the real person around for a week.
Wolf of Wall Street did that with Leo DiCaprio, Jordan Belfort,
So they didn't do any of that for us. They didn't... Miles Teller didn't do a case study on my character or anything like that. Efraim was in prison at the time, so they couldn't do that for him. And they didn't want him involved in the production at all anyway. They knew he was a nightmare to deal with. So, but Stephen Chin, they didn't even care to have Stephen Chin like talk to me. They just wanted him to write a cool story. Okay. But Stephen Chin wanted to write a great screenplay. So Stephen, to his credit, on his own dime, flew to Miami and stayed here for like a week and interviewed me for like 5-6 hours a day, like for like 5 days. Wow. Got pretty much every story I could think of, recorded it all, and based the first version of the screenplay on that. Okay. And then he handed it off to Todd Phillips, and Todd and another writer, Jason Smilovic, rewrote it for like 10 times for like a year. Wow. And I saw different versions of the screenplay because occasionally they'd let me like see a version and like ask my opinion on it. And so I've seen it evolve, and it was a really cool thing to see the screenplay evolve over time. Yeah. And it definitely got more Hollywood formulaic as it went on. Like the original versions were really quirky and interesting, and but then it kind of like the more revisions, it got like more into kind of like the standard Hollywood arc.
Of course.
And like one thing, for example, that I thought was just so Hollywood that they did, like there's a part in the movie, one aspect of the movie is that my girlfriend, that I'm lying to my girlfriend about being an arms dealer, and she gets really mad at me, and she dumps me because I'm lying to her, and none of that happened, right? My girlfriend knew the entire time exactly what I was doing. She was totally cool with it, as long as I was bringing in the money, as she said. As long as you're bringing in the money, it's okay. And that's all she cared about, really. But they need relationship drama in Hollywood. They need a certain amount of action. They need a certain amount of relationship drama, because they know the guys like the action, the girls like the relationship drama, and they need to appeal to as wide of an audience as possible. When they're spending $50 million on making a movie, they need to appeal to as big of a market as possible. And that's why it's generic, so to speak, quote unquote, and formulaic, is because that is the formula that appeals to the vast majority of people. And so therefore it's going to be the
any story will turn
success.
into that.
Exactly. I mean, if they're going for that kind of movie, if they're going for a Hollywood blockbuster, the more they're aiming at blockbusters, the more formulaic it becomes, because that is the formula they know that makes blockbusters.
Of course, it makes sense.
So
Okay, so now I guess movie comes out after the movie. What's life like for you at that point?
So I mean, it was really cool to have a movie made about me. It was very, very surreal. Like I got invited to the premiere, which was very cool.
You were in it as well.
I was in the film. That's right, for like 3 seconds.
Yep, it's good enough.
Yeah. It's my moment of fame.
Yeah,
it's pinned to the top of my Instagram.
There you go.
But yeah, I'm singing a song in the movie. So I'm a musician. I play guitar and I sing. So they thought it would be hilarious if I sang the song "Don't Fear the Reaper" to a room full of 90-year-olds.
There you go.
Nice.
And I thought, in my mind, I was like, they're gonna ask me to sing a song. I should do one of my original songs that I wrote. This is gonna be the launch of my music career. But of course, they were like, you're either singing this song or we're getting someone else to do this scene.
Well, it's funny because like no one really knew what you looked like.
Right.
So like when I watched it again, let's say this week, I'm like, oh my God, that was him.
Yeah, exactly.
No one really takes it in when they first watch it. Right? So there was a little play there.
Yeah. That they did that on purpose. Of course. It's like a little Easter egg kind of thing.
Okay, so then now you're moving forward in life. You have some new businesses. You have some new missions, right?
Yes.
So talk to us about that.
Right. So after, so I've gotten into a few different things since then. The first thing I got into, actually, it happened while I was under house arrest.
Okay.
While I was under house arrest, I was, first of all, I'll say that I was very grateful to get house arrest instead of prison. It's light years better than prison.
Yeah.
You have your own shower.
Yeah. Well, you were with your family too, right?
Your own private bathroom.
Of course.
Yeah, and I get to be with my daughter and and my wife at the time. We're divorced now.
Oh, I was going to say at the time. You said at the time. Okay.
No, we got divorced 12 years
And she was
ago.
the one that was with you throughout that time?
Yeah, she was. Okay. Yeah, she was. Yeah, my daughter's 17 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Time flies.
For real.
Yeah. She still acts like a 12-year-old, but she is 17.
Yeah.
She's never going to watch this podcast, so it doesn't matter. She has a surprising little interest in my fame.
Does she get it?
Like, we actually only watched the movie together just a couple months ago.
Wow. I was going to say, does she like understand what happened?
So she wasn't even aware of it until like maybe a year ago.
Okay.
And then because I think she came across like the trailer on YouTube.
Yeah.
And like there's a part in the trailer where Miles Teller goes, "My name is David Packouz. And I'm an international arms dealer."
She's like, wait,
and
Dad?
She goes to me, she's like, "Damn, what?" She's like, "You're not my dad."
Yeah.
She's like, "This just totally ruins the believability for me. I can't watch this movie."
True.
This guy's using your name. And eventually, she was like, "Okay, fine, I want to see this movie." And so we watched it together, and it was kind of cool to watch it with her. And the thing that most struck her, that she was most interested in, of course, was that they whitewashed her because my daughter is mixed race.
Okay.
Her mom is mixed race. Her mom is half African.
Okay.
And half like Spaniard, so she does have the Spanish accent just like Ana de Armas, but her mom is much darker than Ana de Armas. And still beautiful, but like more like a Halle Berry type of look.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my daughter is also somewhat dark, but the baby that they have portraying her in the movie is completely white. So she's like, they made me a white baby. She's very offended. But she's like, oh, so Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
Whitewash everything.
Yeah.
So you're saying you have the business?
So yeah, so while I was under house arrest, thank you for leading me, getting me off. I tend to tangent. So while I was under house arrest, I was playing a lot of guitar, and my musician friends would visit me and we'd jam, but of course no drummer's going to bring his drum set over. So I bought a drum machine, which for people who don't know is like an electronic device with a bunch of buttons on it. Each button makes a different drum sound, goes on the table. You can make beats on it and then play it in a loop so you can play your instrument to the beat. But of course, every time you want the beat to change, you have to press a button on the machine, which I wasn't able to do while playing guitar. So I thought I need something that's hands-free. I need something like a drum machine inside a guitar pedal that I could operate with my foot. And I tried to buy it, but nobody was making it. All my musician friends wanted one too. They thought it was a great idea. So I decided to make it.
Wow.
And it's called the Beat Buddy, like your buddy that plays the beat. Beat Buddy, check it out. You can Google it.
You patent that or what?
Yeah, I got a patent.
Cool.
I got a patent, multiple patents on it. And that was I did a crowdfunding campaign because I had zero money and at the time, and luckily all the rest of the musician community really loved it, and I raised $350,000 in 1 month in crowdfunding. And that was able to do the manufacturing and launch my company, Singular Sound. And since then I've come out with several other music related products, the world's most advanced looping pedal for people who know that. Cool. Check it out, singularsound.com. You could check out all our products. Then about 5 years ago, the issue with the music industry so my brother, he helped me build this company, Singular Sound, my brother Ellie. And one thing we always complain about, I mean, not complain too much because we've made millions of dollars from this company. It's not, we've done very well. I have no real complaints, but there is a limitation on how far you could take a business that's primary focus is musicians, because maximum 10% of the population is musicians. So it's a small addressable market. We've done very well within that market. We've won a lot of awards.
And you still have the company as well,
yes, the company's still going very well.
Okay.
One really cool part of that business is that I once had, so when I was learning to play guitar, I grew up in the 90s. So I grew up learning to play grunge music, like Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots. And I think it was the second year after the Beat Buddy came out. I was at a trade show, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, you make the Beat Buddy, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I'm Mikey Nez, the bassist of Alice in Chains." And he's like, "I just bought a Beat Buddy like 2 months ago, and I've been using it on tour to write all my new music." And I'm like, "Dude,
amazing.
I learned how to play guitar to your music."
Yeah.
Like I literally
full circle.
Yeah, it was so cool that he's using my products to write new music.
Yeah.
And this is like stuff I grew up on, so it was so cool. And then when they came to Miami, I got backstage passes and met the rest of the band. It was so cool. So yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful for the success of Singular Sound, and I love the business. And
You said you made millions too off it.
I did.
It's funny because you
in the low millions,
of course, but it's funny because
Yeah.
you were trying to make millions dealing arms.
Yes,
to
that's true.
support your dream.
Yeah.
And then turn around and you just actually did it without it.
That's true. Yeah. And it's
Full circle.
And I mean, I don't know if I would have thought of that idea if I wasn't stuck on house arrest. So it turned out to be very lucky for me. I'm very, very grateful for how my life turned out. But
so what was the next? What was the next business from
the
there?
next business, my brother was always complaining to me because he's not a musician, so he doesn't really give a shit. I mean, he cared about the business, but like he was like, I mean, we can never grow this business beyond a certain point. We need to find a product that appeals to everybody. And so we were hanging out at my house smoking weed, as we do, and got the munchies, and we were eating some mango because it's sweet and delicious. And you get cotton mouth, so mango is great. The problem with mango is that you get all these fibers stuck in your teeth, and it's very uncomfortable. So my brother asked me, he's like, hey, do you have any dental floss? And so I go to my bathroom. We're both flossing our teeth in the mirror.
Stoned.
And I'm like, this is like stoned out of our mind, of course. And I go to him like, flossing is such a pain. I really wish there was a machine that could floss your teeth for you. And he's like, dude, if we could think of that's gonna make a lot more money than the music business ever could. And so we started brainstorming, and eventually it took us about 5 years. But we just recently, just a month ago, we hit the market. It's called Instafloss. Check it out. Okay. Instafloss.com, like Instagram, but flossing. Instafloss. Nice. And it's an improvement on the water pick. So water pick uses a single jet of water. But the problem with a water pick is you need to like trace your gum line, at both top, bottom, and on the inside, which is very difficult to do without splashing and making a mess. So we built a system which uses 12 water jets, and you just bite into it and just slide it across your teeth, and it does everything in 10 seconds.
Wow. We would have to
Interesting.
We love flossing. We're always just walking around with the little pick too, just flossing.
Yeah.
Okay. So that appeals to everyone, obviously.
So we just launched it, and it's going very well. And we're currently raising money to expand production. So any investors out there,
there you go.
We can introduce you to some people.
Okay,
for sure,
perfect. So that's going well. And I just launched, actually literally today, as we were talking about before the podcast, launched a third business, which I'm very, very excited about. And the way this business came about is, so ever since the movie came out, like on my various social media accounts, I literally get at least probably between 2 to 3 people a week at least contact me and like begging me to teach them how to do government contracting, which is the business we were doing in the movie. And people are, and oftentimes I get like a real sob story. I get like someone saying, hey, I'm just like you were at that time in your life in the movie. I just have a new kid, and I just got fired from my job, and I'm really desperate, and I swear I'll work 18-hour days, and you can keep 90% of the money. Just teach me something, I'm willing to do everything, and I'm like running these other businesses. I'm not, and I don't even know these people. I don't know if they're really going to work and put in the effort that's required, because it does require a lot of effort. And so, I try not to ignore people. I usually kind of give them a link. I'm like, here, you could read something about government contracting from this link. But then about 6-9 months ago, I get an email. It was an Instagram message actually from a guy named Logan. And Logan tells me, he's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that about 6 years ago, my partner James and we saw War Dogs. We were both 21 years old at the time. And we saw War Dogs, and we had nothing going on in our lives. And we were thinking, man, if these guys could do it at our age, why can't we do it? And we were super inspired, and we worked our asses off. And it took us a long time, but eventually we figured it out. And we built a business, and now we have a multi-million-dollar government contracting business, and it's all because we were inspired by War Dogs. So we just thought it would be cool to reach out and let you know. And I was like, wow, that's actually the first time anyone's told me that is the first time someone's actually messaged me with some success in this business. And I realized, I'm like, so many people want to learn how to do this, right? And there is such a massive amount of contracts out there, and because the federal people don't realize the scale. The federal government puts out 30,000 contracts every single day.
Oh my God!
Every single day. Every single day, 30,000 contracts. That's 30,000 opportunities, right?
A day.
A day. And so a single person, even if you want to go for, you can't even look at that, let alone work on it, right? So, there's as unlimited as it gets as far as business opportunities. So I told Logan, I'm like, you guys have been have built a successful multi-million-dollar government contracting, and you did it by yourself, which is super impressive. Nobody taught you. I mean, like even me, you know, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but like even me, like Efraim taught me the business. I'm not saying I didn't teach myself, and Efraim learned it from his uncle. I don't know where his uncle learned it from, but definitely Efraim did a lot better in the business than his uncle ever did. His uncle is a whole other story, but interesting guy. His whole family is an interesting group of characters. But I don't know if you guys know who Shmuley Boteach is.
No.
Rabbi. No, he was Michael Jackson's rabbi when Michael Jackson went through his Kabbalah phase. That's Ephraim's uncle. So he's kind of like a rabbi to the stars. Also has a bit of controversy around him. A lot of controversy around him. So yeah, so a very interesting family, but not in the good way interesting.
Yeah, I figured as much.
So anyway, so I told Logan, I'm like, I'm so impressed that you guys taught you by yourselves. You learned the business. You built a successful they have multi-million. I think currently they have like $7 million worth of contracts that they're actively delivering on. And so I said, a lot of people are asking me to teach them this thing. I've been banned from doing government contracting for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, they banned me in 2011, and I think I can do it now, but I wasn't able to do it from 2008 when they charged me. So I've been banned for like 15 years. So I don't know if my information is up to date.
Could have changed,
Could have changed, but you guys are currently doing it.
Yeah.
So why don't we build something together to teach people how to do government contracting? And so today, literally today, as we're recording this podcast, was the official launch of War Dogs Academy.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So wardogsacademy.com. Anyone who wants to learn how to do government contracting as a business, we created a very extensive course. We pretty much put as many details in it as we can, and we put it in like bite-sized chunks, and it's in both in video format and text format for people who learn in different ways. And we also launched a forum on wardogsacademy.com, so people who buy the course can interact on the forum and make connections with each other to create business relationships. And every 2 weeks we're doing like a live Q&A session with me and the other co-founders. So people who are having trouble with the course or encountering any problems in their business or challenges can ask us for advice and move past that aspect. So we're very excited about it. And one of the things that we're really excited about is so we're charging $1,000 for the course, which we were told is probably a bit on the low side, considering that this is a business course where you could make literally millions of dollars. So we're probably going to put the price up later. But what we're really excited about is we don't think we're going to make most of our money from the course, because as I said before in the podcast, one of the biggest challenges of doing this business is financing. Right. And you need to float that contract, right? If you get an order for 10,000 AK-47s from the government, you need to pay the supplier in advance. You need to pay the logistics company in advance, and then you need to wait 30 days after you deliver. Right. So you need to have all that money. Right. And most people starting in this business do not have that money. Now, from an investor's perspective, it's actually a pretty good investment, because one of the big risks of funding deals is whether the customer decides to pay you afterwards, right? Because then the investor loses their money, right? Now, the good thing about selling to the government is they're never going to run out of money, right? They're never going to go bankrupt, because they literally print the money, right? They're never running out of money. So if they run out of money, we're all in trouble. All of your dollars are worthless. So it's irrelevant at that point. So from an investment perspective, it's actually a pretty solid investment. Because as long as you follow the terms of the contract, which we're going to do due diligence on, of course, to make sure that you set it up correctly before it gets funded, then you're going to get paid, right? So we're putting together a investor network.
Cool.
And of course, we're going to get a commission on investments to support our students. So what we say to our students is, if you put your money where your mouth is, we're going to put our money and our investors' money where our mouth is.
Fair.
So we expect that, and because government contracts you can win up to $250,000 worth of contracts with zero experience, right? Wow. That's how they do it. And once you win a few of those contracts, then you could win multi-million-dollar contracts. So there's a lot of money to be made even on the small contracts. I mean, you could very easily make like $20, $30, $50,000 on a contract that you need zero experience to win, right?
Cool.
So, and that there's going to be enough margin in there for the investors and for us that we're going to make way more money on
That
people who
side.
successfully win contracts than on the course itself. So we're very motivated for our students not only to buy the course, but to succeed and build successful businesses, because we're going to make more money that way.
Yeah.
And so we're making the course as easy to understand and as digestible to understand. And we're going to support our students through the live Q&A sessions and on the forum, and we also are available for private consulting too, if people want to pay for that. If you want us to like look at your bid before you submit it to the government to make sure you're not making a mistake, we can do things like that. True. So we're providing a suite of services.
Yeah, it's full service.
Full service to launch people.
Wow, I'm sure the students are gonna love that too, because it shows that it's not like you're just trying to sell a course and run away.
Exactly. And when we
Which happens a lot.
I know, so courses online is a big business right now. There's a lot of people selling courses, and unfortunately there's a lot of scams out there, right? And there's a lot of people promising get rich quick schemes. And I will be the first to say, I'm going to say it right to the camera, this is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not a get rich easy scheme. This is a get rich if you work your ass off scheme.
I like it.
That's what it is.
It's the best scheme.
It is. Well, I mean, I think we would all love to get rich quick and easy. I mean, we'd all love to win the lottery.
It's impossible.
But I think your story is an example of, it's not always as easy as it looks.
It's never as easy as it looks. It's never as easy as it looks. But I will say that if you are willing to put in the effort and you're willing to grind it out for long enough, the likelihood of success is pretty good. It's not guaranteed. There's no guarantees. But the likelihood of success is pretty good. You may end up losing 10, 20 contracts that you bid on before you win one. And that can be very discouraging. And I totally understand people who quit and, after they lose, because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to put in the work for each one that you submit. So plenty of people quit after losing 5 in a row. I mean, you're like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not good at it. And my partners, they didn't win something for 6 months before they won something. And then they won something big. And once you win something, it gets easier, because then you have past performance and you're at a higher level of the game, and you have proof to investors and all that stuff. So it's and of course you have more knowledge in the business itself. So everything gets easier once you get that first win under your belt. Cool. But we really want to help our students get there, precisely because there's so many scams out there. And I told my co-founders, Logan and James, I'm like, guys, I already have a fraud conviction.
I don't need another one, guys.
I can't have another one. So we are not scamming anybody.
Of course.
Anybody. We're not doing that. This is going to be something real. It's going to be something effective. And we're going to set it up so we are motivated to help everyone else succeed. And we're going to succeed if they succeed.
I like that end of it with you guys and the investors. I think that gives a lot of faith to the students.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So if anybody wants to reach out, where should they hit you up?
Instagram is a good place. I can't say I answer everybody, because I get a lot of messages, but I try to answer, as long as it's relevant and polite. I get all sorts of messages, but and as long as you're not asking me for too many favors, please don't do that.
I hear you.
Got any AK-47s or?
Yeah. Please teach me everything for free.
Right.
Okay.
But now you have the.
Can I get on the phone and pick your brain for an hour? I'm like, okay,
I think now
pay
you have
me
this.
$1,000. Okay.
Yeah. No, the pick your brain one. We stopped doing that a long time ago too. It's a lot, but Do you have any regrets?
I've got plenty of regrets.
Like, what's your biggest one looking back? Because everything's kind of led you here technically, which is a great place that looks like.
It is. And so the truth is that I'm very happy where I am now. And nothing that I did had too horrible of an effect on my life. So if I could go back in time, I can't say that I would change anything, because I don't know where that would lead me. It might lead me to a place significantly worse than where I am now, and I'm pretty happy where I am now. So I'll pass on the time machine. But of course, I know I made plenty of mistakes. I'm not saying that I didn't make mistakes. It's definitely something I would encourage people not to do business with people like Efraim. Even if you think that you're just going to ride it out for the short term. you know, there usually isn't a short term. It's usually you leave because the whole thing collapses in a really bad way, in either because he fucks you over or something, or the legal system gets you or something. Because it's very like, okay, if everything went right, let's say Efraim had actually paid me, and let's say that Afghan contract went well and it didn't fall to pieces, right? And I had made, let's say I made $15 million, right? We would have still been working on other contracts.
For sure.
Right? We'd be like, oh, we're good at this shit, right? We could go for even bigger contracts. Maybe by the time we finish that Afghan contract, we have another one lined up that might make me $50 million or $100 million. Well, am I going to walk away? Well, I'm going to be happy with $15 million when I can make 50 or 100? Probably not. And once you're in there, you know, the likelihood you're going to walk away is low, which means the likelihood that it's going to end badly is high, if you're doing business with a guy like Efraim.
It's going to get you at one point or another.
At one point or another, it's going to get you. So my biggest advice for people is work with someone you trust, work with someone you admire, work with someone that you enjoy working with. Because Efraim, he was charming, but he was a fucking nightmare, right? He would call me up at 3 a.m. yelling, you gotta get to the office right this fucking second because this is happening and that is happening. Like they're fucking sleeping. You can sleep with your dead motherfucker. You gotta, you know, like, you want to make some money or not? You know, you serious about it? Like once, I was like, it was actually that when he first saw, I remember this, when he first saw the solicitation for the Afghan deal, and he calls me up and I'm like on my way to like take my girlfriend, who later became my wife, you know, out to dinner. And he's like, you got to get to the office right now. I'm like, dude, I have dinner plans. He's like, you got to cancel that right now. You got to get to the office right now. I'm like, dude, I'm not canceling my fucking dinner plans.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, my girlfriend's going to be really mad at me. Oh, she's going to be mad? Let me tell you something. She's going to be sucking your dick after you make all that fucking money. You know? So, you know, he's like that.
He was funny, but he was a lunatic.
No, he was very funny.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. I do not like the guy, obviously, and I want zero to do with him. I hope I never see him again in my life, unless he's writing me a $5 million check for what he owes me, but which is not going to happen. But he was very funny. I'll be the first. He's very charming in a very superficial way and very, very funny. And that's and he used that to manipulate people. You know, so like he would kind of make you laugh and then get on you. Oh, come on, buddy, just me and you. You know, like you know, talk your ear off and wouldn't stop talking until you fine. You know, like that kind of thing. That's like one of the way he would like kind of grind you down into agreeing into things that you probably shouldn't.
Just tire you out.
He would
don't work with Efraims.
Don't work with Efraim or anyone like that.
He seems like a one of one though, to be honest.
I mean, there's people
there
like
might
him.
be, sure.
There are people like him.
Of course.
There's always people like him. I don't know. I hope they're not too common for society's sake, but there's always people like him. There's plenty of sociopaths out there, and people think, oh, I can manage this guy, but no, you can't manage people.
They'll
like
get
that.
you eventually.
You'll get fucked eventually. Yeah.
Oh,
and
what a story.
And if he's fucking everyone else, he's gonna fuck.
Yeah.
Don't
You're not
think
special.
you're
You're not
At one
special.
point.
You're not
Yeah,
special.
Don't even if you're.
He
his
might fuck you
best
even
friend.
more.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, he might just wait a little longer.
There you go.
He's gonna fuck you eventually. So yeah.
Wow.
Well, David, wow, what a
Appreciate
story,
the story,
man.
yeah.
Appreciate
My
you coming
pleasure.
out and doing
Happy
this.
you're here today with us.
Yeah,
to be
likewise.
honest, you
Likewise.
made it through. You made it through the wrath of Ephraim. And you're here with us today. I wish you all the success. Seems like you have a lot of great
I
things going
appreciate
on.
it. Thank you.
Hopefully we can do some more stuff together as well.
that would be fun.
But we have our final question.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
Go for it.
We are the MBH podcast, Money Buys Happiness.
Yes.
So I want to know if you believe money buys happiness.
So, actually, I recently listened to a podcast with Mark Cuban, and I think he put it really well. So I'm going to steal Mark Cuban's ideas here.
Sure.
Someone I admire very much, especially after listening to that podcast. I actually didn't know that much about him until I listened to it. But he said, if you're happy when you're broke, you're going to be even happier when you're rich, right? If you're miserable when you're broke, there's no guarantees you're going to be happy when you're rich, because there's plenty of miserable people out there who are rich, right? And sometimes the people who, you know, when they get rich, it just gives them more things to be miserable about. Right. You know, it's like, oh, this guy's fucking me, or that, you know, or I should have gotten a better deal on that. Or, you know what I mean? Like there's always reasons to be miserable. There's always reasons to be happy. So there's no guarantee that money buys happiness, but it does allow you to look for it in more places.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's a good, yeah. I don't think no one's ever said that.
No.
Well, thank you for that answer. And thank you, Mark Cuban, for the inspiration, for the answer. No, I appreciate it. Once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this with us.
My
it was exciting. And with that being said, guys, you made it this far. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, DM David if you have any questions.
Go watch War Dogs.
And don't ask for anything for
Go watch
free.
it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Buy the fucking course, $1,000.
You guys should all be arms dealers within a year. All right? I don't want to hear any excuses. All right?
You don't need to be an arms dealer. The government buys a lot of other things.
Fine.
But
Okay,
it could be
lots
fun.
of-
With that being said, appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Jay?